Hello. If you can see us, if you can hear us, please do let us know. We'd appreciate it because I never trust these things. I just don't. I can't bring myself. I can't bring myself to do it.
I mean, it's your standard, and welcome everyone to another fine episode of Lorebeards. Now that Lorebeards is back and I'm not lying in my bed approximately 40 paces in that direction, sitting there going, damn COVID catching me again. So yes, if you can't hear us and everything is working well, do please drop a comment and say that we are coming through clearly.
Yeah, and today's going to be particularly exciting. Looks like YouTube's all good to go, and there's Twitch. Great, awesome. Okay, so we're good.
Excellent, good.
Yeah, things are going to be an exciting day. Obviously, a lot of things have kind of happened while we were a little bit on kind of hiatus with Andy being ill, and then I was on a trip. I had a little mini vacation. So, of course, exactly when all of that happens, as soon as we're both busy, Games Workshop's like, here's everything. So of course it is probably good to get caught up on because there's a pretty dramatic amount of new things to talk about, and it's I've talked about a little bit of it, of course, but there's a lot to delve into with the new Cathay Arcane Journal, which is actually a little weirdly the first of two. As Games Workshop has confirmed, they're releasing a second one that's not adding any new units. It's just more lore, which is like, okay, I don't know why it's not in the first one, but sure, why not?
Yeah, it's a choice and a decision that I don't quite understand yet, but I'm sure it'll all become clear when it arrives. And for those of you who've not caught up with the new army list and everything that offers, which is what we're going to be covering today, you're probably going to find that someone like myself, come the end of this, is going to say, well, I'm glad they're writing more. Yeah,
my criticisms of the Arcane Journals is not subtle, of that they are paper thin. We were looking at, if you buy a White Dwarf magazine, it's like almost 3 times the size of the Arcane Journals. And it's not my favorite. I do hope that as we get into later editions, we maybe go back to the way army books used to be, because when I compare like 6, because I always found 6th and 7th edition were kind of like the prime book design as far as like your ratio of like lore to art to tabletop stuff. Not a huge fan of the current one, but I will say for what little lore they did put in, they did drop some pretty big bombs.
They did. And I'm kind of looking forward to going over them because some of them are pretty big. There's also, for those of us who read quite closely, a couple of, again, potentially intentional or not intentional lore rewrites where they take what was established Warhammer fact, including Warhammer fact that was established in the Old World rulebook, and then just overwrite it completely and say, actually, that thing we wrote over here is completely different. So yeah, that's going to be quite fun for us to go over, because for all there is scant information here, we're talking just a handful of pages. What little information they have does do a few controversial things, which I'm quite happy about, because it's always nice to see the lore being taken in slightly different directions. It'll also be interesting for us to have a discussion about the tone of this book in comparison to the tone of some other of the Warhammer Arcane Journals and just Warhammer books in general, because Cathay is presented in a very different way to most of the Warhammer, let's call them nations or realms, however you wish to put it. Indeed, nations is a word they seem to like. They dropped it 3 or 4 times on the first page alone. The editor clearly deciding that the word nation was super important. So yeah, there's a lot for us to discuss in this one, and unlike most of our Lorebeard streams, this was not going to open with me waxing lyrical for altogether far too long with an introduction, because we're not actually tackling one specific subject. Instead, we're discussing the contents of one of the new books that are being released for the Old World game. So you're not going to sit here on the other end of your call where I'm sitting there going wah 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 about where Cathay came from and the roots of Cathay in first edition Warhammer, and then how it changed into Warhammer 3rd edition, and eventually we got the Cathay we got today. No, we're not doing that today. It's going to be much more of a, and this is what we've got, what do we think?
He says that like that's not the best part of Lorebeards. Yeah, it's this book. I also found very interesting from a community perspective. There was a lot of argument about this book caused in the community.
Was there?
Which understandably, I have opinions about various takes, some of which I've talked about, but we'll bring up again in this stream.
I'm excited by this because I've been offline entirely when I was ill because I just went, I have to switch off, get better, make sure I'm completely fine before I come back. So this is an aspect of the conversation I'll be particularly interested to hear because I have no idea how the community is taking this book at all. I've read it end to end. I know what it offers and I know what I think. It'll be interesting to see how that compares with what the internet and, of course, what Sotek has been thinking about it as we progress on.
Yeah, because I mean, I think just off the bat, something that we can actually talk a little bit about as sort of a intro, letting people wake up and get in here, is that the book is written very weirdly in a sense that the best way I could describe it is that the person that wrote it as if it's God voice, but it's very clearly not. Like it's demonstratively information from whatever. Yeah. Info from like characters' perspectives and a lot of like opinion pieces. It's more like the old 6th edition propaganda books, but the style of writing they chose for it is in God voice, which I think caused a lot of the controversy about the book. And people go, oh, so Cathay's just like the best thing ever. And it's like, well, if you look between the lines, you see the cracks of what it should say, but the style of writing is weird. It's a super weird take on writing an army book.
So that's interesting because I read through it for the first time, completely blind, without any expectations as to what it was going to offer. And by about page 3, so about 3 pages in, so that's probably page 7 of the book, I was like, oh, wow, they're really dialing up how perfect and harmonized Cathay is. And then as I went on, they're like, wow, they're really dialing it up and in the God voice, to a point that it started to feel not like your standard Warhammer. And it wasn't until we got into one of the little side banners where it quite clearly states, yeah, it's completely broken with political infighting. The harmony that they are seeking to achieve is very much a goal, not the truth, in one tiny box. But you would never have known that if you read the rest of the book. The rest of the book pretty much goes harmony, 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 and it's perfect. I was left going, well, this is certainly a write-up. And it was very much done from God voice, meaning that this is fact. This is the truth. But if it's the truth, then parts of the Old World book, as we're going to discuss, aren't truth because it contradicts it. In fact, the book contradicts itself, where at one point saying everything's in constant harmony, and then later on, no, it's not. So we've got a very interesting take on Cathay that to me feels like it shouldn't have used the God voice.
I agree.
Or alternatively, if it did, it should just be rewritten. And I know that that's a harsh, immediate first take to take, but my first thought when I first read through it was, this is almost apologetic. This is almost an apology for Cathay, saying that Cathay, apology in a different state, now it's not they're apologizing for Cathay, but it's basically making Cathay perfect. And everything about it feels like it's propaganda. And I read it going, what? This is definitely a thing that you could say, but this is not how I would write it. So it feels like it's a propaganda piece. And I completely agree with Sotek there. It feels like a misuse of the God voice. And that God voice gives it a depth of truth that I feel that the text really isn't aiming for.
Yeah, especially because, and for anyone that's like, get into the specifics, we won't just say it. We're just letting people kind of like wake up and get in here because it's been a few weeks. But the thing that I found really funny about the book is it didn't need to be in God voice at all because so much of the book is from Shin Yang's perspective. Like it's basically his book. Like the vast majority of it, which is really interesting and something we'll talk about more in a little while because he is not a character I thought they would ever explore. I thought he was going to be kept kind of more like the Emperor of Mankind, where he's very mysterious. This book's like, no, we're just getting his inside thoughts. Like, we're just going right in his head for the vast majority of the book.
Yeah, it's a really interesting take, particularly because this is our first opportunity to see Cathay. And how do they decide to tell us about Cathay? By saying, dragons met Sigmar! Dragons! Also, dragons went to Nehekara! Nagash! Nagash is bad! Dragons! Oh, by the way, there's a town or two in the place. Here's one of them, discussed slightly with one of the dragons. And they tell you almost nothing about Cathay. Who are they? How do they work?
Yeah,
what's going on? What are the dragon-blooded? Where did they even come from? Even that is not given any real detail. They just are a thing that's in the army list. It's almost hilariously lacking in detail about Cathay. There's more detail about Cathay's impact on the old world than about Cathay at all. And there's more detail about the Empire than there is about Cathay as a whole. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, a part of me is really, really wondering if the second book, based on what little bits they've said about it, it sounds like the second book is going to be more about actual Cathay, like, and the people of Cathay. Because, like, even... It's a weird book. Like, to put it very bluntly, it's a very weird book. Like, I enjoyed what's in it, but the best way I can describe it is, like, it feels like someone took usually the section. So, like, if you read the old army books from, like, 6th, 7th, or 8th edition, usually they're kind of divided up into two sections, which is, like, here's the, like, origin of the faction, and then here's, like, what the faction's been up to since their origin, and we only got the first half. we didn't get... Like, most of this book doesn't even take place post Sigmar. The vast majority is pre Sigmar, and you're like, well, this is great, but, like, considering how few pages you dedicated to the story of this playable faction, you didn't tell me shit about who I'm playing.
And in particular, when the little bit of background that it does get, your first thought is going to be, so it'll be Yin Yin we see then.
Yeah, I know, like Miao Ying. Barely mentioned.
Miao Yang, why is she the choice? I mean, Miao Yang, it does say she popped over to the old world a couple of times. It did a couple of things. But Yin Yin's clearly characterized as the seafaring adventurer that goes across the oceans and visits other places, opens doors diplomatically, and has been across the world doing crazy stuff. Where's Yin Yin? Nowhere to be seen.
Yeah,
Loved it.
Like, yeah, doesn't even have her banner's not even represented in the old world yet. It's like apparently so distant from what's going on. But anyway, okay, so before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's go ahead and get through, like, the opening super chats and bits and stuff.
Yeah, let's see what we've all got to say. And just a quick before we go, thanks to everyone who is sending me all manner of good wishes and well wishes in my direction. I was very ill with COVID. I can't believe I bloody caught COVID again. It was pretty bad for about a week or so. And the last couple of weeks have been me just going on into recovery and trying to get better. I am broadly now better, although if I decide halfway through to just do this, and that was me pulling a foolish, stupid face that looks like I'm about to fall asleep, for those of you listening to it on the podcast, you'll be aware that I am still pretty tired.
Yeah, and for anyone curious, we are doing Araby, but we decided to push it back 1 week to kind of just get caught up with, like, news and everything. And that one's going to be a little bit more of a dense, going into, like, a lot older material, which means a lot more, like, triple checking a lot of things.
It's the only way to do Araby.
It's a lot more work.
It is.
To kind of ease back into it, we're doing this, and then we'll be back into it full next time. Man, I wish I could find it. I was gonna put it up on screen because it just made me laugh, but someone had put up a very funny fan art of you as a Nurgle champion. I don't know.
I know. I saw that. It made me laugh.
It was very good too.
It was brilliant.
I don't remember where they posted it, but
I can't remember either. I'll go find it. It's over in Discord.
All right, so Magladroth, hello. Glad to have you back. If you're feeling better, defeated Nurgle for good. He's never defeated for good, unfortunately.
Yep, defeated.
I hope Lorehammer can reach 10K subs by the end of stream. Are we that close? Was there like?
No, we are not that close. But I will go take a quick check to see where we are, because if you haven't subbed, you absolutely should, because we'll be doing a nice fun stream when we hit 10K subs.
1.5K, so that would be awesome.
Yeah, it would. That was my fault. So blasting out my speakers.
That would be fantastic. It would be a little unprecedented, but would be super cool if 1,500 people just want to sub right now. That'd be great.
I'd smile.
DCB, please. You both must needs create business.
Cash App, PayPal.
With links on channels or other media, we want you to receive 100% of donations. Okay, so here's the thing, right? So I'll give you a little peek behind the scenes of content creator stuff. So there's a problem with this. Actually, there's two problems with it. The first major big problem is that there are unfortunately bad actors in the world. And the thing about these kinds of apps is that a really popular thing these days, someone tried to do it to me, which is why I don't have these available anymore, is that they'll give you like various tips or donations or whatever. And then once you've like accepted the money and do stuff with it, they then do a chargeback through their bank.
Yeah.
And PayPal and Cash App, unfortunately, have a douchey process where even if you're like, hey, no refunds, like you could say all the legalese bullshit you want, they will not only give that person's money back to them, they will then charge you on top of it a fee for their chargeback. They put it on you, the creator. So it is a very easy way to harm people that do what we do. So unfortunately, the answer is no. The reason we use things like Super Chats and bits is because you're basically buying it through them. So if you try and pull that, it pisses off and hurts YouTube and Twitch, but it doesn't hurt us. So that gives us a layer of protection. So that's why we do that, and we will not do those. Sadly, true. Yeah, because you'd think that people wouldn't be shitty, but unfortunately, people are just shitty. I'm sorry to say. Darius Rose, me getting out of a toxic relationship. Fuck it, I'm gay. Abrash getting out of a toxic romance with Neferata. Fuck it, I'm gay. We were meant to be. Wow,
clearly.
You've been holding on to that for like a month. Thank you, Darius. Appreciate it. Also, good for you, I guess. Destroy to create. I agree with the DCB. It would be nice knowing you get it all instead of YouTube or Twitch taking some of it. When you guys painting Yao Ying model, well, so she's not out yet. She's gonna take a while to get out, and even when she does come out, it's not only a big mini, but it's two minis. And I am starting to put back my painting desk together, but that's going to be a challenge that I get around to at some point. But it'll be I'll do it as a stream. It'll probably be fun. I don't know if Andy still paints minis anymore.
Yeah, I do. Although when I do. Change glasses time. Hashtag old. But yeah, I'm seriously tempted because Miao Ying is pretty goddamn great. For all I was waxing lyrical about how I prefer to have Yin Yin, and I would, Miao Ying is a gorgeous model and it's super, super tempting. But I have a pile of shame in my house that's larger than most people's houses. So as and when I'll do it is a completely different kettle of fish. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I will note that I am pretty pleased to see that Cathay has sold like gangbusters. I can't buy any minis except for like the most expensive ones that are like a single mini. But all of the regular minis are sold out. All the books are sold out. Everything's sold out, and it's wild, which is nice to see. And hopefully, it continues to be a successful range.
I hope so,
because that means we get more plastic ranges. Ricky Chapman, we really need to hunt the nurglings that live in your house, Andy. We recommend warp fire throwers. Warp fire throwers would not actually be the ideal way to deal with a demonic infestation. I don't know how to tell you that.
Let's wash them over with warpstone. It'll be fine. Nice one, Ricky.
The corruption with more corruption. What could go wrong? Masculine says, to your continued health from here on at least. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Let's see. Who rescued you from Nurgle? Was it a god?
It was Lindsay. And she is a god among women, so I'll say yes, it was a god.
There you go. what would the Cathayan version of Mulan be like? Giggles around, but if someone, I think if someone was trying to capture the essence of like the film story, because the real story is different than the film. But if you were going after like the 90s film that's beloved by so many people, it would probably be more of a story. If off the top of my head, it would probably be a story of like a dragon-blooded Shukengen wanting to be more with the human side of Cathay than the dragon side of Cathay, and kind of
interesting. I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking that perhaps it would be a normal mortal posing as a dragon-blooded Shukengen, because because the gender divide is not an issue for Cathay, because obviously women and men share equal status across their society. So we couldn't use the same character doing the same thing, but we could definitely pull upon the same themes of somebody in a position of privilege and moving into that position of privilege and desperately fighting for it. And one of the greatest positions of privilege inside Cathay is being dragon-blooded. And that moves from being really weakly dragon-blooded up to very, very strongly, like first generation dragon-blooded. So that being the case, I could see that potentially being a thing, hiding as one of those, so that you could move into a position of leadership.
Because then you get the whole thing of like, you know, she's blending in with like the celestial, like the Jade Warriors, and builds up to the Celestial Dragon Guard. She saves the Celestial Dragon Emperor from some horrible Chaos Lord. Like it worked itself out very easily, and
almost certainly would fall in love with the dragon, because that's how these things always land in the end. So that'd be super fun.
Russ W1256. The Warhammer gods have returned. Oh, well, that's very generous. Thank you. Glad to see you've managed to evade Nurgle's grasp again, Andy. Looking forward to I don't know so much of evade as like just endured it.
Crawled through it. I'm fine.
Yeah, evade would imply dodging, which I don't think is what happened.
Yeah, no.
Good job. It's like, good job evading that cannonball, Hans. And he's like just on the ground.
Missing two legs and an arm.
He's still alive. Nice. I love the both of you, so please keep up the good work. It's good, so good to see you both, and I hope you're both doing well. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And doing well, except for
the book reminds me a lot of 5th edition Ultramarines. 5th edition
Ultramarines, and that's not unfair.
I've also seen a lot of people in the comments comparing it apparently to the new League of Votann book. Of that apparently this has happened as well over in 40K when they're introducing like new factions, which is silly because I think it burns more people than it impresses, to be honest, because a lot of the complaints I've seen is like, oh, this isn't Warhammer. This isn't Warhammer. They're too good. They're too awesome. It's not Warhammer. And I'm like, yeah, I can understand how they read it that way. I can totally understand why they feel that way. I don't personally agree, but I also come in front-loaded with all the lore from Total War, which is much better about showing a typical view of Cathay with all of its ugly parts out on display that make it fun. This book doesn't include any of those. And like Andy said, if you don't happen to catch it, it's really easy because of the way it's written to take this book at face value and be like, okay, I guess Cathay's just like the best fucking thing since sliced bread. Yeah.
It's unique. We'll go through it bit by bit by bit, and you'll understand yourself as we go through the book that the way it's presented does make Cathay seem entirely different to the rest of the Warhammer world. And it's something that we will almost certainly have to focus on to a degree, because that's what the book does. But as Sotek says, there is more to it. And that's not just Total War presents something different. It's that even the words in here do have enough seeds sown to show that Cathay is not quite as blanketly awesome as the first few pages suggest.
Yeah, I predict there will be a funny thing where we break down each like section, and it's going to be a lot of like, here's what the book says, here's what is probably actually the case. And why they should have just done the actually the case, because it actually is a much more interesting story.
Just to say, I would not have written it this way if it was me.
Super Ola, glad you guys are back. Me too, us too.
Nice
there's been some discussion on Discord about subjects such as the Cathayan Dragons' potential future fluff for like Kami for Nippon. Basically, some people don't like the Cathayan Dragons are referred to as dragons / as Eastern Long / Ryu have a very different cultural origin. What are your thoughts on fitting things from real life? Okay, so So I will say that Eastern dragons, well, actually, I'm going to say Eastern cultures are difficult because there's a lot of, like when you get to sit down with like historians that specialize into it, there's been a lot of strong crossover between a lot of them. They've intermixed really, really, really heavily, which a lot of cultures have. But for them, especially from a Western perspective, we often get very caught up on things that might not be as big of a deal depending on what your access to that material may suggest. But I do think that it's important not to get too caught up in specific details as far as, well, this isn't exactly like the real life mythological version. And it's like, well, yeah, no, it's a Warhammer interpretation. Yeah. And we also don't know what's going on in those other places. Like, we don't know what's going on in Nippon. We don't know if Nippon has a different type of dragon. They very well might. I think a lot of people would argue that like Ulthuan dragons are very different from Old World dragons, for instance. Even though they're both Western dragons, they're very different. So I feel like this is a lot of that is people seeing something going, well, that's not exactly the way I would have done it. Therefore, this is really, really bad cultural understanding, which it might be. But the people that I've spoken to that do a lot of research and care a lot about like Eastern mythology, particularly like Chinese history and stuff, are pretty happy with Cathay. And Games Workshop's almanac articles where they've really delved into, this is the research we did. This is how we came to this conclusion. This is the research we did for this. This is how we come to this conclusion. I honestly feel pretty good about Cathay, and it feels like Games Workshop did their homework. Now, you might not like where that took them, and that's okay. You don't have to like it, and you're more than entitled to that opinion. But I don't think it's... I think they did an okay job.
I'm going to agree. And I'm going to agree from a position of Western lack of understanding of the Eastern myth. So in many respects, I'm not an authority you can at all respect in this particular opinion. But I have been turning to lots of others to see what they think. One of the things I did when TikTok went through its first major collapses, I went over to Little Red Book and I never stopped. My Little Red Book feed is nothing but mostly Warhammer and various Eastern appreciations of Western stuff, because inevitably that's what has been pulled up for me. And the general opinion that almost everyone has over there is, oh, it's a lot better than I expected. I think that tells you a lot about what they expected, much in the same way that anyone attempting to do somebody else's culture is always going to be a touch difficult. But the general appreciation seems to be they've done a pretty damn good job. They've put a lot of thought into it and they've really tried. And I think that's something to celebrate rather than something to try and pick apart. It's a fine example of what it could be. And I do think that people who want to have like for like lifts from the real world into Warhammer are always going to be disappointed no matter where it is in the world. Baba Yaga, no chicken huts. That's not what Warhammer's about anymore. It's not simply about porting Robin Hood over and creating Bretonian Robin Hood. It's about looking at the myths of the real world and then translating them into something Warhammery and unique, different and cool. So I think Cathay is a fine example of them doing it pretty well.
Yeah. Darius Rose, in terms of genetic/cultural diversity, what human nation would be the most diverse? And if you had the chance to expand the diversity, which one would it be? So this one's a little tricky because from an army book perspective, they're all very homogenous, super homogenous, based on what the army books tell you. If you were to delve in deeper based on like actual published material, it's the Empire by like a billion leagues. Like the Empire is super culturally diverse because it's had the most focus. And so people like Andy and other awesome authors have gone in and go, well, the Empire is gigantic. So it should have a bunch of different kinds of people in it. I would say that if someone ever took that same approach to, like, say, Grand Cathay would probably have an obscene amount of different peoples from all over the world because it's huge. Like, Grand Cathay is dumb huge.
I would go much further than that and say not just is Grand Cathay huge, that all the territory it contains will have so many different cultures and genetic diversity. Cathay is so big that it would have, much like real world China, an enormous amount of diversity within it. Now, if you're outside, you might just go, well, they're just Cathayan, and you're correct. Russia, for example, many people have a view that all Russians are, the almost westernized Moscow-centric style of Russian. But Russia is an enormous country, and it has so many different diverse ethnicities all the way across it, ranging from what many people in the West view as deeply, deeply Eastern-appearing people, right through to very, very Western-appearing people. Kislev simultaneously has a great diversity of population, particularly if you take a look at the Kislev that we have in the Old World, which spans right across the Old World's mountains towards Cathay. It's an enormous area which would hold an enormous amount of diversity. But if we're just doing in terms of genetic and cultural diversity, which would have the most, it would be Grand Cathay. Now, over the course of time, that has been turned into one huge culture. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a great deal of a great diversity of genetic material in that area, because it's so huge and so many human tribes would have been in that area. If we're looking at cultural diversities, the one that's the clear leaps and bounds ahead at the moment is the Empire, but that's purely because it's had the focus, and it is the land of Sigmar, and we all know how much Games Workshop loves to focus upon Sigmar. So the Empire sort of, but in truth it would be Grand Cathay.
Yeah, though there could be some really interesting stories.
In truth, it would be something from the Southlands, but we've not been there yet.
Yeah, but we haven't been there yet.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah, there's a lot of fascinating stories to be told. That being said, chance to expand the diversity of one. So excluding the Southlands, because we don't really have a faction there yet. For me, I'd actually like to see Bretonnia given some better wax. Bretonnia is hilariously homogenized to like a silly extent of like, it's the Brittany people and that's it. No one else has ever been here or moved in or was here before the Brittany showed up, which seems unlikely to me, or any of that other stuff. Interestingly, if there's a certain Saurus out there, he and I are currently writing just a little bit of stuff about that for a Bretonnian thing that he's doing. So we're doing that as part of Lawhammer, and I believe he's intending on publishing that publicly. So if you watch this space in about 4 or 5 weeks' time, there's going to be a nice little bit about a different cultural group that was in Bretonnia before the Bretonnians. Yeah, awesome. Very exciting, actually. Biofoot, 3 cheers for Andy returning for the grass with the fishmen. What new fishy lore is in the Arcane Journal for Cathay? Welcome back, Andy. So I don't recall seeing any specific fishman parts, but who knows? Maybe looking over it will. What about the children that Yin Yin had with all those fishmen? Yeah. It's their fins. They're just so impressive. Smiling Kira, any new hint on the Jade-Blooded Vampires? So within the book itself, no. I actually don't know if Andy knows about this, but Games Workshop did comment on the Jade-Blooded Vampires. Oh, did they? Yeah, they said 2 things, one of which was very funny because they made a mistake, and the other one is interesting. So the first is that they misspelled Herakte's name, and they called him Herate, I believe it was, or Herate, something like that. But they spelled his name wrong, which made me laugh. And the second thing is that they basically said that they didn't tell us anything about what they are, but they told us what they're not, which is that they said they're not doing the Jiangshi, which are the like stiff vampires that hop. They said they're not really practical for the way we design our armies and the way we want like the Jade-Blooded Vampires to work, so we're not using them, which I'm like, all right, I think they'd make like a cool specialist unit, but I can understand that. And then the second thing they said, which caused a lot of discussion, was they said that the Jade-Blooded Vampires do not use body horror, which is a very vague statement because that doesn't like what like is like shredded flesh hanging from your face body horror. Like a lot of people would say, oh, if your intestines are out, that's body horror. But like, is showing any bone at all body horror? Because it seems very much they're catering to when you're dealing with like the Chinese market, they have very, very, very strict rules when it comes to what can be shown on a corpse. Yeah. So that seems to very much be what they're referring to. But what exactly that's going to look like on a playable undead army, to me, is like, I don't understand what they're going to look like then, because it's very restrictive when we look at like Western vampire counts It sounds like the Jade Blade are going to be something entirely different, which is not bad. It's just interesting.
Yeah, I'm cool with whichever new direction to go in. Don't particularly have any preference. After all, there's so very little existing lore to potentially contradict. So if they go wild, they go wild. It's fine.
Diamond, I think one of the big issues with the books, they aren't focusing on the immediate neighbors of Cathay or their internal threats, because they're so focused on how it relates to the other playable factions. So we're getting a big overall history, but no detail. So it feels less like they're expanding east and more like they're sticking a big, impressive, but empty faction on the side of the old world. So I'd say that's a fair criticism. There's definitely
Agreed.
There is definitely a note in the book that they are very, very vague about, like you said, the immediate threats to Cathay, because obviously those are not yet playable factions. So like they mention them, but they don't go into any details. Like they don't talk about End. They mention the Blood Naga of Koresh, but don't go into any details. They mention the Hobgoblin Khanate, but don't go into any details. Same thing with the Pawn. So we're kind of left with this weird situation of like the only bad guys they talk about is Chaos. And even then, they don't really get into any specifics, which is a criticism I have that we'll talk about later. And we hear more about like what they were doing with old world factions, which like, all right, that's not really relevant to who they are as a nation, but sure.
Yeah, there's some very interesting choices, which you'll see as we start breaking it down.
Cathay, finally some smart humans in Nehekara. And am I a joke to you? Yeah, yeah, you're not wrong. There are parts of this book that I think will age very poorly. As like new factions and more information comes out. This book, like once again, if this book had been written as the lore section is like the journal or like the diary, not the diary, but like the thoughts of Shen Yang is how they advertised it. Like this is what the Celestial Dragon Emperor has seen in the world, and this is what he has noticed in the world, and they're able to do a better, because that could have worked so well, because it would have, like the book talks about how he becomes more and more distant from the world as time passes. So they could have played it off as, as he retreats further in the world, he doesn't really know what's going on anymore. So he doesn't really know about all this other stuff. And we're just learning about what he experienced as he starts to retreat more and more. And that would have made a really nice intro that would have done all of this. Literally everything in here would have worked for that.
And it would have worked better if, for example, it had been, say, the dreams of Shen Yang as they're being interpreted by one of his court, a great astromancer.
That would have been even better.
Okay, an astromancer who is interpreting the thoughts of this great dragon emperor, then that would have landed much better. And the information would have been exactly the same, but would have been in game and from a certain angle. And all the things that it emits would make sense because it's just the dreams that are being read. And all the things that it includes would also make sense, particularly from the view of the importance and the central thrust towards the great harmony of Cathay and how it is true, regardless of the fact that when you actually see it in practice, it isn't true. So I think it would have landed much better.
Yeah, so the way that this book should have opened, if you go read the old 6th edition Army books, they're really fun because almost all of them, the opening lore page will usually be an in-character person being like, I am such and such, and I'm going to tell you the history of our peoples because you're young, whatever. Like the dwarf one is like a long beard talking to a group of beardlings. Or the dark elf one is a dark elf, like Dreadlord talking to one of his children. Like they're always like in-universe characters. If this book had opened with like it, especially with how old world focused this is, if this book had opened with, hey, I am such and such of the Empire translating the notes that we have been sent from this astromancer ally of ours from an embassy, and here are his interpretations on the inscriptions of the dreams of Shen Yang in relation to the approaching diplomatic envoy of Miao Yang. Like setting up the second journal, that would have gone over so much better, because then it would have been like, of course this astromancer is saying how awesome Cathay is, because he's doing a diplomatic propaganda piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything that can add just that little bit of mud to the entirely reliable God voice always makes the writing that's being produced by Games Workshop a little bitty better. And the reason why it makes it better is Broadly because that means that if they make a contradiction to other things, it doesn't matter because it's an in-world perspective and they believe they're right. And that works perfectly. So all the people out there who are going, but it contradicts this bit of lore, or, it's all too perfect, or it's just this, that's not Warhammer. They're immediately silenced because it's the opinion of that individual in-world. And it also, in many respects, covers the ass of the writer for their own potential mistakes that they might make, because we're all fallible. We all make mistakes. We miss things. For example, the enormous and ancient human civilization that sat in Albion. We've discussed that in previous ones. A good old dragon I was about to say vampire. Good old dragon emperor over in Cathay will know about this, the central thrust that was around Nottingham, the Citadel of Lead, whatever you want to call it, over in Albion, which was a central point of the old ones, and a human civilization of great age. And then to suddenly say there wasn't any, and they weren't doing stuff, and it was only Nehekara, that's something that the dragon clearly knows is false. But an in-character writer would not need to mention any of that nonsense, and nor need the writer worry about mentioning that nonsense because it's an in-character view.
Yeah, and the instant we get a End or Nippon book, which does not seem unlikely if the old world continues to go or be successful, is going to make this book look very stupid.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. This book is going to date badly if they do more books over in the East, and it seems exceedingly likely that End, at the very least, is probably going to be massively expanded. It's this big open area that they've done very little with, and carries a great potential market for Games Workshop as well, because India is a massive burgeoning market. So the idea that they wouldn't like to access that billion or so people and all of their disposable income is obviously farcical. They would like to access that. So finding a method of doing so is not unwise. End seems certain. End will blow this book away and make it look a bit foolish in places.
Yep. Seditian, painting the ceiling with Lorebeards on. Perfect. Be nice to your back. Take breaks. Dynaman, on a shorter note, GW, where are me Jade crossbowmen? Yeah, it's they only had so many minis that they wanted to release in this particular wave. And just remember the eternal rule that models are forever, rules are temporary. So buy what you think looks cool, because what its rules are going to change. Just get what you like. Necro Player, I remember from Sotek's vid about the book, you got a question about Miao Ying having a child with... Oh, we'll get to this. Well, I don't want to jump ahead on this, but we'll get to this. That was a theory that was brought up that could have some very fun replications, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Survivor, by the way, Andy, ran across someone on Reddit talking about Nuln and the surrounding towns' naming conventions. Who can I thank for the town's worst time, aka Sausage Home, and Fertshausen, aka Fart House?
Okay, it's worse. It's like there's like arsehole and everything down there. So the original names for the places around Nuln were created for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay First Edition a long time ago. So this is when Games Workshop still held it. There was a lot of names created for the various small villages and towns around the Empire that were basically either directly named after people in the studio at the time, like Priestlichheim or Anseldorf, or alternatively, they had a German book and they just literally, in a dictionary, went, yeah, let's make it this, ha ha ha, that's really funny, without any great deal of thought. So we're talking about late 80s Games Workshop studio, and it wasn't just one individual, it was a bunch of people who were writing for Fantasy Roleplay at the time, and they'll have included people like Graham Davis and, say, Mike Heel have been involved with it as well. Yeah, the folks in the studio at the time. In fact, I might ask Graham. Because I wouldn't mind knowing who did the ones around Nuln. Graham will almost certainly know.
Still loading. Howdy. Anything about Shinzu or unnamed Dragon Kids? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Shiamba gets a huge lore dump. Like a shocking lore dump, to be honest. Thoughts Princess, most diverse nation culturally is probably End. Could be.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just depends. We'll have to see when we get there.
Particularly if it's any reflection of any form of India, almost. India is as much like China. It combines so many different cultures with so many different groups of peoples underneath one big umbrella. And it's not like, say, the United States, which is a bunch of colonists moving across the country and absorbing and often destroying the local cultures. Instead, these are cultures that, in many respects, managed to stand the test of time. And even when they were colonized, managed to stand the test
it's
of
like,
time.
Man, I wish we had absorbed them.
Yeah, quite.
That's not what happened most of the time.
No. Absorb them at the end of a pointy stick.
Yeah. How would Cathay and old world wizards interact? Probably a lot like wizards from most different forms of teaching would interact, that they're going to have different understandings of magic. And it's going to lead to some people being more open-minded and trading ideas, some people being more closed-minded and thinking the other people are idiots or corrupt, and all manner of things. Because magic, I mean, just in the old world, magic is interpreted in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I find this one rather interesting as well, because we have ourselves a bunch of dragons and their various descendants who can use magic in a different way to the old world. But in terms of their actual rules, they're just given the old world rules plus a few extra spells for yin and yang, and that's about it. So the actual rules wise, they're basically doing the same stuff through slightly different lenses. But if we're to look at the greater depth of the lore, they are doing very different things using the same source. They view the winds in very different ways as well, meaning that we would almost certainly have a great deal of intellectual curiosity on both sides. Cathay is, through the course of this book, very clearly defined as being intellectually curious and expansive, while simultaneously being defensive of what is theirs. Repeatedly, they talk about their peoples moving beyond their borders to make trade with others, to form great alliances, to move along and outside of their own areas to learn from them, and to also teach. There's a great deal of almost the fingerprints of the gods, the old idea that all the old civilizations got their tech from a greater, older civilization. In the Warhammer world, that appears to be the Cathayans. They very much and very repeatedly claim, and they went over here and gave him gunpowder, and they went over here and gave him stuff. They are not shy with their stuff. They are quick to make friends and alliances. It's really quite an interesting way of viewing what Cathay is. The impact that Cathay must have had on the Empire, if this book is in any way true, will have been significant, and it's currently not a part of the history of the Empire as we know it. And by that I mean, of course, Sigmar's empire, not the Cathayan Empire. The impact will have been large because they were exporting tech. The big hole here is, why the hell isn't black powder all over the place much earlier in the Warhammer world, given what Cathay is like? And that's a question that I think the roleplay game is almost bound to answer at some point, because they're going to have to, because Cathay, as it's portrayed in this army list, is a great force for, and I'm going to put this in heavy quotations, good, and also a great expansionist force for technology, as they're spreading what they know around the world, all coming from the big dragon boy at the top.
Yeah, and there's and I will say that I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. It's going to result in a lot of changes, but it makes Cathay part of the world, which some people aren't going to like, because some people just don't like change and just don't. And that's understandable, especially like in nerd cultures, we tend to be very resistant to things that are like changes and retcons and stuff. But when you have like a major geopolitical faction appearing in the world, they're gonna mess with things. They should. And it's just gonna be interesting to see how it goes down.
Yeah, I agree. This is the creation of Grand Cathay in this form is one that will move and shake the foundation points of the entire Warhammer world and how it has developed. And I think that's not a bad thing, because for too long, the focus has been on Empire, Sigmar for about 65% of all output from the old world, even when the Empire wasn't that big in terms of sales from the overall old Warhammer sales. It's just because that's where the first touch point was. That was the first place they created, and they just kept on spilling out from there. And we have ourselves a Cathay that massively impacts that. And that's, I think, good. And I think it's only good, though, if someone puts the thoughts into the world building and makes it all make sense.
Diamond, another point of contention is that since the Dragon Emperor is more powerful than Crooks has much money, but is scared of Nagash, that means Nagash is more powerful and is further flame to resist. Personally, I disagree because one, Nagash was basically a god at that moment, and two, nothing the Dragon Emperor and kids did broke the previous limits of magical feats. Some reached the pre-established S tier, but none broke. Okay, so I think. So I talked about this a bit on my last stream of that. I've seen some people saying that, like, oh, in the lore stuff, Cathay is they're so OP. And when I read it, I didn't really see anything that jumped out as overpowered to me. Like, I feel like some people are taking massive leaps and they're like filling in gaps with made up stuff in their head of, like, at no point in the book does it say that Shen Yang is dramatically more powerful than the Slann. Like he does some cool stuff.
He's old.
Yeah, and he's old as fuck, which means that he's gonna be strong. Like, Warhammer has always had an established trope of that if you're very old, you're gonna be very strong. It's just the way it works. But, like, I haven't seen, and I personally, like, the moment with Nagash where it says he kind of witnesses Nagash reach the height of the Great Ritual, and he's like, oh shit, that guy's kind of scary. I don't know if I could beat him in a fight. I like that moment of showing that Shen Yang is not, like, he's not invulnerable. There are things in the world that make him go, ugh. But even then, it's not like he fought Nagash and got his ass kicked. It's that he saw a rival power and went, oh shit, there's a rival power over there. That wasn't there before, and it happened really fast. Like, it happened really, really fast. And it causes him to change kind of what he's doing a little bit, which is fine.
I was not hugely impressed with how that part of the book was pitched. We'll get to it later. So I'll lay out what I thought when we reach that part when we get into the book. But broadly speaking, I agree. Whilst it's easy to go for, oh, they look like they're massively overpowered, I don't think so. The Nagash thing in particular massively weakened that as an outcome, because Nagash, bluntly, is all of that, but simultaneously isn't. Hell, Council 13 took him out with just a king. There's all manner of ways that Warhammer things can look scary to each other, but I'll get to that when we do it later.
Yeah. One theory I liked is the Dragon Emperor destroying the polar gates either through demonic trickery, thinking he was stopping the old ones. That's a fun fan theory. I wouldn't say that there's anything in this book that jumps out at me as supporting it, but
no, there's not.
But if you want to have that as a theory, it's fun.
Yeah, feel free, but yeah, that's definitely not a core component of what that book suggests could be the case.
Creme Galto, y'all trying to hit this blunt? No, thank you. It's all for you, dude. You enjoy it. Tom, man, does the Tomb King's Arcane Journal still say that after such a priest gains collapsed into infighting as Nehekar's border shrank? This seems like one of the aspects the Cathay and Arcane Journal contradicts. We'll get to that when we're, like, breaking down the various stuff of that. Yep. It says some interesting things about other factions that definitely conflict with those factions' stories, which is not unusual for Games Workshop. Mr. Warren, it feels like this Arcane Journal was the necessary first step to fuse Cathay into pre-existing history of the Warhammer world and help illustrate how it's always been part of it. Future iterations can then explore the Eastern Theater more intently, such as in. Please, God, keep book 7, give us a Cathay book. Would be nice. And I agree, but it could have been done way better. It could have been done substantially better. Hannibal, hello, gentlemen. With a Celestial Emperor said to be stronger than the Slann, it seems Eastern Dragons are vastly more powerful than Western cousins' thoughts. Okay, so I will note the only place that Games Workshop has commented on this is in a community article, which Donovan brings up here. Of that, so community articles, I will always say, take with copious amounts of salt. Of that, they are often, it's not like a piece of the written lore. It's like you're getting bites that are trying to entice you to buy things, as opposed to something that's being written into the setting itself. And when I look at, like, what they actually wrote about it, I've talked about this on stream, we'll talk about it in a second, of that if you go read the Old World Big Book, what the Slann do, according to the Old World Big Book, is way more impressive than anything Shen Yang does in this book. Like by himself. Like he does some really nice things with like the power of his nation behind him. And I would say that it makes sense that Shen Yang is going to be probably S plus tier, one of the most powerful characters in the setting. But like, is he stronger than the Slann? He might be. But saying that, oh, well, then all of the Eastern dragons are more powerful than all of the other dragons and Slann and stuff, I feel like is a leap. His
broadly. Broadly, I would suggest the following, and I'm going to go perhaps in a slightly different direction to how many would put it. Do I think this individual dragon is more powerful than any individual living Slann? Yes. Living Slann. But do the Slann work together in a way that, for example, the Emperor doesn't? Yes, they do. So they are collectively more powerful, I would argue. But he held off against the onslaught of the old ones all the way back during the Great Saurus destruction of the world. He went toe-to-toe with them and survived. He is very special. And of that, we shouldn't bother trying to claim that he isn't. He bluntly is. But does that mean he's vastly more powerful than the Western cousins? No. The Western cousins went through a variety of different processes, one of which included becoming part of the great plan of the old ones, meaning that many of them were subsumed into and became a part of, for example, Azure Society and the great deities and gods that we're building. Well, not Azure Society, High Elf Society. No, Elf Society. God damn it! I'm still sleepy. Elf Society and how they were built. And individual dragons, Western style, are sometimes enormous in a way that makes the Eastern dragons look small. So the answer to this is, stop trying to compare apples and pears. Stop trying to compare carrots with turnips. They're all different vegetables or different fruit, and they all have different qualities, some of which are stronger, some of which are weaker. They can all do different things, and I think that works very well. But sitting at the top of the dragon pyramid at the moment is, without any comparison, the Grand Emperor of Grand Cathay. He is. He's at the top, and that's fine. There's always going to be a big one. Nagash, for example, is our best necromancer. We know that. Nagash is at the top. So I wouldn't say all Eastern dragons are more powerful, but I would say this individual one definitely is.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, if you're...
powerful in what way? That's a good one.
And, like, you know, the whole, like, age power thing of, like, oh, he's so much stronger than the Western dragon. Remember that Shen Yang doesn't have any contemporaries among the Western dragons that we know of. Like, and Caligon the Black Calgalanos, and Caligon's Middle Earth. Calgalanos the Black, who is like the big bad of the old world dragons, and Draupnir, who was the father of the elven dragons, aren't around. We don't know where they are. We don't know what happened to them. If they were around, they would probably be in his ballpark.
Yeah, but agreed. Completely agreed. I think it's very easy to get lost in this odd power play of which one's better and which one's worst. But they're all judged by different metrics, and they are all at different levels at a variety of different areas. So when you try to compare one with the other and say just claw strength, you might find that our Eastern dragon is way down. But when we add magic, when we add empire, when we add everything, suddenly our dragon emperor's up the push back to the top again. There's lots of different ways to measure these things, but I would not simply say one is better than the other.
Vasily, some of the larger criticisms you may find with Cathay is likely due to CCP mandate. Blizzard had similar issues with their original Pandaren lore. I mean, that could be the case, but I haven't seen anything that jumped out at me as like, well, this is bullshit that was obviously influenced by a foreign government.
I don't think that's the case. You often find that it's not that these things are mandated, it's that these things are feared. So people self-edit rather than have edits pushed upon them. So they're afraid a certain outcome will be expected, so they just write towards that outcome. Do I think this version of Cathay would have been different if we weren't selling it in China at all? Yes, I do. And I don't think that can in any way be argued. Of course it would, because this is a product that's being sold into China. So they're going to be taking the primary market into mind. They want to sell into China. It's an enormous market. Of course, they're going to take an angle which makes the Chinese faction look great. That in no way surprises me. Is it how I would have done it? No. I think all the information is fine. I just think it was pitched wrong.
Yeah. Sean Schultz, who would the Dawi like more, Nippon or Cathay?
Well,
we don't know anything about Nippon, so I can't answer that.
Yeah, totally.
That's like asking, like, who would dogs like more,
Endurumbria
or humans?
Endurumbria.
Yeah. Don Man, there's a quote some people brought up. Oh yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
Cathay's having the best gunpowder. Some people think it should be the dwarves. I don't think I have an issue with it. There's slightly different reasons. Sotek's spoken about steam power. I think Cathay has the best powder due to their alchemical strength, but the dwarves have better guns due to their engineering strength. So, yeah, this is okay. I'm gonna cut to the core of this because I'm seeing this repeated in constant amount of these comments. A lot of people, I think, very unnecessarily, are obsessed with this idea that how dare a new faction be the best at anything when there are pre-established factions. This is clearly bullshit. Who cares? Who fucking cares? Like, I don't understand why everybody's so butthurt about it. It doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't matter. B, it's fucking propaganda shit. C, like, there are so many easy ways to poke holes in it of, oh, Cathay has the best gunpowder. Yeah, well, the dwarfs' guns are substantially more, like, sophisticated, despite the fact that the dwarves move so slowly technologically. So clearly Cathay has some kind of problem. And Cathay also, this is something Total War pointed out that I actually really liked back in the day, is that Cathay's technology has started to fall behind globally, which is really interesting, of that they don't have steam power. They've invested very heavily into like gunpowder and some other techniques.
And magic.
And magic. But because of that, they completely lost the technological race. Like, they just lost. Like the Empire, dwarfs, Skaven, Chaos Dwarfs are all rampaging ahead. Cathay is like, they're almost like the elves. They're so reliant on magic that they just totally fell behind.
Yeah, I agree. Loosely speaking, this is the same argument that you would have if, for example, we're discussing magic. Why is the Empire not as good as the elves or the Slan at magic? Or why are the elves in any way competing with the Slan at magic? That makes no sense. No, they're all doing different things within their own tech trees. The tech trees for Cathay are strongly gunpowder and magic based. The tech trees for the dwarves are strongly rune and strongly gunpowder and tech based. They have lots of crossover, and that's fine. People are constantly crossing over with their cultures. There is literally nothing here that feels to me in any way odd or unexpected. And in many respects, it's reflecting a lot of real world developments also, because as we know, black powder was pretty much formulated over there first, and they are reflecting that in their version of Cathay. And that's good. I like it. It's fine. We don't need to have every single peak power being also the originator of said power and being the only one that's close to the peak of that power. It's fine. It's good. I like it.
Yeah. Plus, I'll say, I don't ever think dwarfs should have been like the best gunpowder faction, considering how many dwarfs like just don't like it. Like, you have entire holes that are like, no, that's not traditional. We're not even going to use this shit. Like, I like the fact that there are factions that have like superior versions of it, because the dwarfs are they're kind of not super into it in most of the Karazhan core. There are some holes that are like super into it, but a lot of them aren't.
The core of the dwarves is they're great fabricators, but they're also deeply traditional, which limits their fabrication. Where the Cathayans have a great direction, which might be a better way of putting it, meaning that the points that they are interested in, for example, alchemy, are high on the list of things that they pursue.
Yep, clearly Boris Ursus is the most powerful being. Well, according to Total War, he just decided not to die and came back, which is hilarious.
That's how it works.
The Open Aura, what are the chances to see a hybrid dragon elf in the future? That would be awesome. I would say pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
One of the
to the
things,
point of none. As it currently stands, the Eastern Dragons gain their shape-shifting capabilities from the Empress, and that's where they come from, which is why we get hybrids. If you're looking over at the Elves, where they have clearly interbred is on the spiritual side. We've got a host of dryads, naiads, similar types of spirits that when they take on their more normal non-war aspect, they appear to be like elves, often elven maidens, but not always. And they have, at various points in the background, interbred. So they are a very spiritual people, but not necessarily as physically mandated to dragon fucking as you will find over in Cathay, which is pretty much the norm.
Yeah, that's not to say that, someone hasn't tried. I bet lots of individuals have tried, but also the Cathayan dragon kids, because like mom and dad don't have kids anymore. It's just the 9 or the 5 that we're left with. They can only take a human form. Like they have a specific human form they can take. They're not able to turn into whatever they want. They can't turn into dwarfs. They can't turn into elves. They can turn into a human form. They can't even adjust that. Miao Ying can't turn into like a little kid or a super old woman or a man. She turns into herself.
Miao Ying. Yeah.
So like they're shapeshifters, but it's a very, very limited form of shapeshifting. Whereas the Moon Empress can apparently turn into any fucking thing she wants. But she's also very mysterious. This book keeps her very mysterious.
Having said that, though, there is often very strong binding chains almost between dragons and their riders. And often that could be equated with romantic love. So I don't think that is beyond the realms of reality, but it just wouldn't be physically realized. It's on a different plane, so to speak. Elves with their elf bullshit doing things a bit differently to everyone else. A deeply emotional connection, but not really a physical one.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna do this next one, and then I'm gonna put a pause on Super Chat stuff so we can actually get into the.
We're actually getting the bloody book. Yeah. Look at the time. It was like an intro from me.
We appreciate that y'all missed us. One of my biggest pet peeves about Cathay is those massive terracotta statues of theirs. Those things should collapse under their own weight, and using ambient magic to negate an effect of gravity just seems extremely wasteful to me. Like buying a Ford F150 when you just want to drive to the supermarket 10 minutes by foot. I feel troll-sized terracotta soldiers would have been a better fit, and hope we'll see something along those lines at some point. So yeah, Rule of Cool wins this one. They look fucking awesome, so they win. The reality is that because they're standing, all of the force of their weight goes into a very small area, meaning that they would crunch through most landscapes that they attempted to walk on. The only place where they would be at all useful would be mountains, and very solid mountains at that. You send them into a plane and they're going to be going up to their knees repeatedly into the ground because so much of their force and weight is going into such a small area. It's like wearing stilettos but with a giant stone man instead. Yeah, it makes no sense in the slightest, but it is fucking cool, so I'm more than willing to put up with it. Vaguely gestures to giants, vaguely gestures to dragons that fly.
Indeed. Giants are much lighter than solid stone, though.
True. Yeah.
So you can kind of get off with those. And other things that are flying or using magic, you get off with most of them. These are an almost egregious example of fantasy winning over reality. But they're so fucking cool that I kind of don't care.
Yeah.
But I agree with you.
Yeah, it would be nice, or it would be really fun to see if there end up being alternative versions in the future that are like smaller in scale, but there's more of them. That might be something that shows up later. But we don't.
There's an example here of how you could easily resolve it. They could be hollow.
They might be.
And indeed, but the suggestion is they're not, because whenever you see them break up, it's like bits of them fall off or whatever, and they're solid inside. I would suggest, though, that the very construction of their nature makes them possible. So, yeah, it's not a waste of magic. It's just how they work.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to put a pause on Super Chat stuff for a little bit. I really appreciate y'all. We'll get back to those in a little bit, but we're going to actually work our way through some of the sections.
Let's get through some of the sections, because I'm keen to dive in with the realm of the Celestial Dragon, because I'm going to open with something I think is actually an egregious example of why they should have changed their entire tone. And it's very, very first paragraph.
Yeah. I was about to say, so everyone keep in mind that this book literally says that Grand Cathay is the most perfect, harmonious place on earth where everyone is happy. It literally says that. Like this, I'll point out later when it says, but like it literally says that. But then in the opening paragraph, it says, Grand Cathay is the land of the Celestial Dragon Emperor, oldest and most powerful of all the Eastern Dragons. For over 5,000 years, the Celestial Dragon and his Empress, the Moon Dragon, have ruled their empire. Many times has Grand Cathay been threatened by foreign powers or internal rebellions.
First line.
Like, what?
Okay, so it opens with, I think, a nice opener. Basically, it's the land of the dragons, and it is a place that's riven with problems from outside and from within. But I think it opens with arguably a wrong statement of intent. The statement of intent here is the only thing that matters are the dragons, where Grand Cathay as an idea is the people. All of the people working together towards the great harmony. It's not the land of the celestial dragon. He is merely the one at the top of it. He is more the conductor for the orchestra. You wouldn't go and watch an orchestra and listen to it to hear the conductor or to see the conductor's work. The conductor is merely a facilitator for the greater peace. The greater peace of Grand Cathay is the people. But according to our write-up right at the beginning, the only thing that matters is the emperor and his wife. That's it. And I think that right from the outset, we've got a tonal shift that feels weird because the whole of it is the harmony of all of it working together. But all of the writer's concern is dragon, 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 dragon. And right from the outset, it's the realm of the dragon. The only one that matters, right at the top. The people are not very important at all, which means if we're looking for an in-between-the-lines reading, we've got a dictator. We have got ourselves an absolute authority who strangles control, and the people are not what matters. The dragon is what matters. So for those of you out there who are going, so how close is this to China and its great communist ideal? It's literally not. It's nothing like the great communist ideal. What we have is an absolute dictator. And that's how it opens. This is the land of the dictator who demands that everybody works according to his rule, and they often don't. The first paragraph makes it clear. Internal rebellions, invasions from foreign powers. They are in problems from all around. That's good. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, so that, and I 100% agree with Andy of if this, and this is what this book should have done, is this book should have taken the idea of Shen Yang cares about himself and everything else is basically a tool to his objectives. Because we're going to go through this, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what each section says and then what it's actually implying. So coming to the old ones. I'm not going to read it.
No, don't read it. Oh, yeah, here we go.
I'm not going to read it word for word. But this one is kind of interesting. So it's not one thing that I found curious about this section is the way I interpreted it, which I'm actually very curious of how Andy feels about this, because I don't know if Andy interpreted it this way, but with combining from a little bit of the Shadow of Chaos section as well, is that the way I interpret it that I find interesting is, to me, this book implies that Shen Yang never fought or talked to or did anything at all with the old ones. Instead, he hid. He hid amongst humanity.
So I find this one bloody fascinating. This entire opening section is the coming of the old ones. So what we have is the pre-old one world, which is an almost... It's cold and frigid and a land of volcanoes and horror, and dragons and giant creatures rule the world. And Shen Yang in particular is at the peak of the great pyramid of creatures that live there, ruling in his own little corner. Then the old ones come along, yank the world somewhere else, and Shen Yang goes, "You what now?" The great gates are opened in the North and South Pole, and magic floods the world. Contradicting the old world book, the winds of magic are already there. The winds of magic are there right from the very beginning. So the winds of magic have entered the world pre the collapse of the gates. We have the winds of magic, and Shen Yang decides that he's going to study them and master them, because this is the tools of the old ones. So he uses the winds of magic and presumably attaches himself strongly to the Zir wind, because we all know that's loosely where it goes. So we have a complete rewrite of what the old world says within the first section of the book. What we have here is a complete revision of what it was like before the arrival of chaos. The winds of magic exist. Shen Yang's probably a coward. Grand Cathay, as we understand it, you think wouldn't exist exist. But hey, we're about to move to the shadow of chaos and find out Grand Cathay already exists because he's grounded himself. He's grounded himself in amongst humans. He's learned shape-shifting from his new wife. He's having a bunch of kids with them, and he's already hiding amongst humanity. It appears that the story of early Shenyang isn't one of great fighting and holding off against the old ones. It's instead getting in, hiding amongst some humans over in the east, and basically putting his head down.
Yeah, now I will say, personally, I fucking love this because
Me too.
it works with everything we've known about the world. Of like, the old ones show up, they're dominating everything, no one can stop them. At best, you can hide. How do the greenskins survive? They hide, but below the ground. How do, like, the dragon ogres survive? They hide. Everybody hides. And for the longest time, we wondered, like, what was Shenyang's deal? Like, did he, like, bargain with them? Like, we know some of the dragons talk to them, but it turns out Shenyang never talked to the old ones. He studied them from a distance. And the moon, now, I will say, the Moon Empress, I really love how vague she is in this book because frankly, she is creepy as fuck, but we'll get into that later. She does something absolutely insane later. But Kuei Yin, the thing that's really interesting is that it notes that she first adopted the form of a dragon on the moon so she could come down to be with Shenyang, which implies that they somehow had like a long distance relationship and that she took on a form that would be like pleasing to him in order to come down to the world, which is super interesting. And doesn't explain dick, but is really interesting.
Yeah, by the end of this section, what we can say for certain is that the Warhammer world as it began was awful, and Shenyang liked that. Then the old ones came, and Shenyang, it doesn't say he warred against them, he doesn't say he fought, he doesn't say he had Saurus chasing him around the world. Instead, he says that he observed the old ones, saw the winds of magic, learned the winds of magic, and then continued to observe. As he continued to observe and watch what was being unleashed in the world, he noted that everyone else was going underground to avoid them. And he simultaneously watches throughout all of those process, not being involved. Then along comes the Moon Empress. They're clearly having a long-distance relationship, or she's somehow watching him from on high going, hey, how you doing down there? Descends as a dragon with their big flappy wings and goes, hey, dude, how's it going? They get on, and she then, shows them shape-shifting, shows them how to mix in with men, and gives them somewhere to hide amongst all the people. And here we go. Grand Cathay is a thing. Grand Cathay is a thing thousands of years before Grand Cathay had previously been founded. It's a thing way before the Cataclysm. Grand Cathay is already being built. And this is so unlike anything we had before that it's almost hilarious. At best, the story we had before was Cathay was the original binding together of some of the tribes underneath the rulership of the Emperor and the Empress. And then eventually they spread outwards and made Grand Cathay, but no longer.
The trickiest thing for me is figuring out if the author intended to be like, this is the like foundation of Cathay, or if they were like, oh, people are going to be too stupid to realize where I'm talking about if I don't say Grand Cathay, even though it's not actually Grand Cathay yet.
So the answer to this has always got to be the same thing, which is we have to assume that the author has some intelligence. We have to. And knows how to use words because that's their job. And their job clearly states Grand Cathay already exists. Yeah. It's that simple.
And he's nicer than I am to authors.
It is that simple. It's not just one mind that does this. There's editors. There's often 2 or 3 writers involved, sometimes just one with an editor, but there's at least 2 or 3 minds here, all of which can say, Grand Cathay doesn't exist yet. No, it's been rewritten. Grand Cathay existed before the Cataclysm. They have changed it.
Yeah, so awesome stuff. Generally, I like these changes. Cool. All right, let's kick on to the next one, and then we can grab some more super chats real fast. So next, we get to basically that among the humans, 2 humans become very, very famous. The fiery, passionate, and powerful Shenyang, and his graceful and very luminous wife, Kuei Yin, and that among the humans staying in human form, they basically become very respected leaders. They become basically like the most respected wise man and wise woman among their peoples. And they teach them things like masonry, metallurgy, alchemy, and stuff. And this makes a lot of sense. They know a lot of magic. They're very old. It's very likely many of these concepts were discovered in the era before the old ones arrived, because it's not like both of them come from very complex civilizations that are very different from humanity, but had very complex ideas and knowledge of how to do things. And they start passing this on to humanity. And this is where we get our first interesting bit of that Shen Yang, according to this story, which once again could be kind of propaganda coded, but I think it does say something about him, really doesn't want humanity to see him as a god. He's fine being like the first among like people, and I would say this is likely due to the relationship that he sees of like the early races and like the old ones, or early races and their gods, because we know by this point the elven gods are probably a thing at this point.
Yes, they are.
That Shen Yang probably knows what a god is, and he goes, I am not that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that.
Yeah, the next section is pretty simple. It's that the Dragon Emperor and the Dragon Empress get together, they have some kids, and they prosper. And this is in a time when the world is being absolutely wiped out by the lizardmen. So we have a bit of a why are they prospering going on, but they are definitely prospering. They don't tackle the story of what the old ones are doing pretty much at all. It's barely mentioned. At this point, it's a time of fire and bloodshed for the Warhammer world.
Well, yeah, if you're not old one approved.
Indeed. So we have ourselves a people who have hidden away from this, either through diplomacy, either because they have become part of the great plan, either because they're being left and ignored. It doesn't really matter what the reason is, because we know for certain that they prosper. And as they then prosper, the 9 dragon kids are born, and slowly but surely, as the centuries pass, the whispers of chaos start coming to their ears. Yeah, and before the cataclysm comes, those whispering chaos gods are already doing their job.
So this also brings in another big retcon to old lore. Not as much old world lore, but huge compared to old lore, which is that humanity is already like well developed.
Yeah.
Like it's the old lore used to always say shit like, oh, humanity was like cavemen that barely knew how to slap 2 rocks together. And this goes, nope, that's bullshit.
Yep. Agreed.
Now, granted, Cathay obviously gets like a big leap forward because of having Empress and Emperor with them, but this shows that early like humanity was not as primitive as the elves and the dwarves tell us they were.
And if you go over to our Albion stream, you'll know that this is not new. Albion has an entire high technology human civilization at this point as well. So this is not the only human civilization that you will find pre-cataclysm in the old world. There's at least 2, if not more. And there are probably significantly more. After all, there are many ethnicities of humans in the world. We're looking at several population groups across the whole of the Warhammer world, one of which is Cathay. And this Cathayan group is pretty much, by this point, now ruled by dragons who are already looking at the idea of everybody working together with them at the top of the pyramid. And they're already beginning to suffer the effects of basically powers from beyond, gods, and in this case the ones that they're concerned about are the chaos gods.
Yeah, and I will say I do very, very, very much like the confirmation that the dark gods were whispering to people, like trying to get the attention of powerful forces. This ties in well to go watch our old Dragon Ogre Shagged
Dragon Ogre stream. Yeah,
this
perfect.
Literally confirms all of our theories about how the Dragon Ogres made that bargain.
Yeah, what we suggested then was almost controversial because it was generally said the Chaos Gods didn't exist till they came. No, that wasn't. No, this completely not only rewrites that as history, it repitches it in a fashion that makes all the rest of the background make sense.
Yeah, so the Famir makes sense. Dragon Ogres makes sense. Great, awesome.
Defo.
Also, the other thing I really liked in this section is that when it talks about the dragon kids, one of the things I found really interesting is that they are clearly born as dragons, which we knew because they're dragons. But they're taught to shapeshift at an early age and to temper their primal fury. Which one of the things I like is this really shows that they were taught to live as humans
Humans
before they were allowed to live as dragons. they had to blend in. We have to blend in, which is great. That's super interesting.
And also for those who are asking out there whether the original dragons were born by egg or were born as human, the answer is by egg.
Yep. All right. Actually, we're going to get through these next 2 sections. Then we'll get caught up in Super Chat.
Yeah, because there's not that much in these two. Because these are well-trod areas with a couple of controversial new points added.
Yeah. Cataclysm, there's very little new here. This one actually almost repeats word for word some old text about the coming of chaos. The only thing it adds is that this made me laugh really hard the first time I read it because it's genuinely funny, though a cool story, of what Xinyan does when chaos first shows up. Of that, like, a lot of people, when I heard the criticisms before I read the book, because I was on vacation, I didn't read it until I got back. A lot of people were like, oh, they said Xinyan's more powerful than Slann. I was like, oh my God, he must have done something insane during the Cataclysm or whatever. And so I come home to read it. And for reference, the Slann, when this happens, they stabilize reality, move the planet Malice, which is the Warhammer world, and the moon back into orbit because they got knocked out of orbit, fix the solar system because the solar system got fucked out of orbit. They do all of that within the span of like a few minutes, and a lot of them die because of it. And they also contain the chaos portals back to the north and south. So they almost closed the gates.
Yeah.
Very impressive. And I'm like, wow, what's Xinyan gonna do? And then you read this, and basically all Xinyan does is, it's like, the best way I can describe it is, imagine someone sets off a bomb, right? And what Xinyan did is, instead of the room blowing up and fully engulfing in fire, he basically like Control X'd the part of the fire that was coming at him and just gave it to everybody else. Like, he didn't dispel it. He didn't eat it. He just redirected it so it was everybody else's problem and not his problem, which is not that impressive. It is, but compared to what the Slann did, it's not that. I
think it perfectly contextualizes his power level, and his power level is that of an individual Slann, but arguably better. But at this point, he's still not as in control with magic as he will be several millennia down the line, after several millennia worth of using it. He's never had to deal with a massive onrush of magic. He's only been dealing with what they refer to here as the winds of magic up to this point, and he's been studying it, trying to become as powerful as the Slann. But he hasn't been tapping into the great world network of magic that the Slann have, because we know they've got their geomantic web of awfulness that has so much magical battery power in there that it's ridiculous. He's not tapping into that. Chaos comes when the chaos gods see the chaos gates, and they view them almost like pools of warmth in a great freezing abyss, and they come swimming up to it, and they feel this light, and they start craving the light and the heat of the material realm. That's how it's pitched in this angle. And as they get there, they start looking for ways to get through the gate, and they find they can't get through. So they start talking to whatever is close to the gates and saying, get us away through, get us away through, get us away through, until boom, they get through, and magic floods the world. And what does the Dragon Emperor do? Holy shit! It's pretty much his response to that. It's fucking tons of magic, far more than he has ever had ever in his life, far more than he knows how to control. And he, at his best, he puts his hands up and he shields Grand Cathay from the worst of it. Meaning that magic still floods through his land, but he shields his people, he shields his children, presumably he, his wife, and his children all working together to try and hold off the worst. And then war starts, and proper war begins. Whilst the Slann are getting shit done, over in Grand Cathay, they're surviving the worst. So we get an idea of the differences between what's happening with the Slann and the Lizardmen on one side and the great project of the old ones, and over on the other side of the world where we have our dragons who are literally in danger. They're fucked. Too much magic they don't know how to control. And then what does he do next? He basically starts studying the new magic. It's the same magic as before, but there's more of it. And now he can do a lot more, but it's a lot more dangerous, and there's demons everywhere. It's the coming of chaos. We all know what it involves. We know what the cataclysm is. He is not in a position at this point where he is fixing the cataclysm or helping out. He's doing the exact opposite. He is merely surviving. But because of what he does, the civilization that he's already built with Grand Cathay is likely to survive this, unlike any of the other great populations of humanity that you will find spread across the old world. We know what happens over in Albion. We've discussed that already. What happens over here is comes to pass because the dragons were there.
Yeah, and then Unity and Chaos. This one's actually quite fun. This one basically deals with that while Xin Yang and the Moon Empress and his kids were like very high regarded and were like kind of almost first, I wouldn't say first among equals, but it reads like they sort of stood apart as a part of, opposed to being one of the 5 tribes. That at this point he goes, okay, he realizes very quickly that him and his kids alone and his wife cannot defeat chaos. They need legions. They need an army. And so he sends out 5 of his kids to basically go take over the human tribes. To show up and say, I'm in charge now. And this is one of the parts where I would say that to me, this is very propaganda heavy. Of that, it basically reads like they just showed up and were like, hey guys, I'm here to lead the way. And everyone went, yay. When in reality, it was probably brutal.
Yeah. This entire section, I really wish had been pitched differently. In terms of the outcome, which is, there was the original area, let's call it Cathay, just so that we get a nice clean distinction while we're discussing this, but they've called it Grand Cathay from the beginning. But let's say this initial area where the Dragon's World was called Cathay, and they sat in there and they went, well, holy shit balls, we're fucked. The world's about to fall apart. Everything's going wrong. We need more people. We can't do this by themselves because contrary to what page 1 says, where it says, it's the realm of the Celestial Dragon. It isn't. It's the realm of all of the people working together. Everyone's a part of the great machine. Imagine them all like the individual little cogs of the Adeptus Mechanicus, if you wish.
A whopping
everyone.
5 active dragons and millions, if not billions, of people.
And billions of people all working in concert with each other according to the great design, the great plan, if you wish. So they then spread outwards, north, south, east, and west, and form what is in truth the beginnings of Grand Cathay. And indeed, contradicting their early statement, they even describe it as the nascent Grand Cathay, as if Grand Cathay didn't exist already and had done for many centuries, as has been said in a previous conversation. Let's ignore that. It's now the nascent Grand Cathay to come.
But Andy, I thought the authors do things for a reason.
Shush! Shush! Okay, I'm not going to start criticizing the editing. God damn it! Okay, so this is why having a figure provide this information rather than using God voice would have been better in this individual circumstance. But regardless, they move north, south, east, and west, and they expand. Now, we know what the world would have been like at this point, because we've had it described multiple times. It's a demon-ridden hellhole. So the north, south, east, and west that they're moving into is a whole host of primitive human tribes that have been warring against each other and against Cathay or Grand Cathay or whatever the hell the Dragon Kids' little land of harmony was originally called. And they go out and they pacify them, not only pacifying them, presumably cleansing them as well. And I think this is the bit that's missing. The Dragon Emperor at this point should be pitched as the figure who is able to bring unity and clarity, and most importantly, cleansed being to what is probably going to be mutants, demons, magic going wild, everything going wrong, and cleanse their people. Because this is something we know that the Dragon Emperor does and has done repeatedly to various groups.
It could be that he hasn't figured out how to do it yet, which we don't know.
It would make sense. This is the time that he does figure it out. It would be a lovely part of the story. Him realizing that humanity corrupts badly, really badly. And what does he have to do to bring them from that so he can use them to fight off against the greater corruption that's coming from the north? So there's a story here that feels like just wasn't told when they just say, they moved out. It was great. See all those other humans? Yeah, they joined up. It was fine. We all got together. Woo!
Yeah, I would have really liked to see a little bit extra about like knowing that he has to unify the tribes, not just because of the military power, but that humanity will corrupt if they're not being babysat. Of that they must have harmony, because if they don't have harmony, they fall.
Yeah. And there was a beautiful opportunity here for the writer to explain why Cathay became Grand Cathay, why they decided that the people had to live a certain way to hold back all of the temptations of chaos, that they had to work together and, importantly, be constantly perceived as successful, to be constantly in a position where they feel like they are not only succeeding, that falling, that the temptations of chaos are never an option because you're betraying all of the people who rely upon you. There are so many lovely bits here that just sort of weren't taken, but most importantly, none of them were contradicted. It's a really, as Sotek said, it's a really propaganda-heavy piece. As in, everything was perfect. We just all got together, and chaos were super weak. We just walked over them. It was fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, we done? Excellent. We're out of here. Woohoo!
Yeah, and in a perfect world, this had been like an actual army book. We would have gotten like a nice, like at least paragraph on how each of the dragons did it, because you imagine each of them would have required different methods, and why Shin Yang says this is the child that will be in charge of this group of people, because there's a reason.
Yeah.
Which it implies, but it does it in one sentence in a very tacky, like, and everything, and they were just best friends, which is not what happened.
Yeah.
It's like you read about Li Dao and you're like, okay, Li Dao definitely went in and murdered people. Like Li Dao was killing people. But
so Yin Yin would have been the one who was diplomatic, and that would have brought strengths and weaknesses, far greater amounts of people, but far more corruption in there, which would have brought problems. On the other side, murder everything that doesn't work, but tiny armies that are very focused, not very elite, and easy to destroy. Each one of them would have failed in different ways. Each one of the dragons would have ultimately, because of their individual strength in a very select amount of the winds of magic, characters that work in a single direction, would have been weakened from the greater picture, which is why it was important that the Emperor, upon seeing all of that, comes down and says, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Effectively, it's almost like the myths and the moral tales of Grand Cathay, the things that the people need to learn from. These are stories that are not just about the foundation of where Grand Cathay comes from, but they're also the foundations of how everybody has to work together and why. This is the foundational myth of Grand Cathay, and the myths can be sort of almost seen here. You can almost feel how Grand Cathay became what it came from these scant sentences. But the few scant sentences we have take such a bland way of viewing it, which is the dragons went out and they were fine. And you're just left going, bah, come on, we know their characters, we know who they are, and we know what they were facing. Everything you're saying here feels like a massive, choose your color wash. It's not a whitewash per se, but it's definitely a big wash of something.
Dragon wash?
A dragon wash. Yeah, they dragon washed it. And the writing of it just feels so very, very,
Yeah. Okay, we're getting caught up on some Super Chat stuff. Fire State kind of sounds like what happened to other real world civilizations where at one point advanced. Yeah, one of the things that this book makes me feel very strongly about the humans of Warhammer, which I like,
back in a sec.
is that I feel very much like what the book is suggesting, which I'll say this again when Andy comes back just to get his thoughts on it. But to me, it feels like instead of saying that, like the old lore, that humanity was primitive and unfinished and just like that instead humanity may have been slightly unfinished, but that humanity was at like a good state. And then it collapsed because humanity, unlike the elves and the dwarfs or Grand Cathay, most of humanity didn't have like a guardian or didn't have like a suitable force to protect them. And so they got absorbed by like Bellacor's empire, or they were, basically the lizardmen basically like kept them in the jungles of the Southlands to keep them safe. But when the lizardmen were heavily destroyed and forced back to the temple cities and stuff, and humanity eventually kind of like escaped and wandered out north of the desert, or north into the, it wasn't a desert then, but the plains of Nehekara, that they forgot a lot of knowledge. So I'm going to re-sum that up very quick since Andy's back now. Of one thing this book suggests that I really, really like about Warhammer and the Warhammer, or humans in the Warhammer world, is it suggests that it's not what the old world said, of that humans were like primitive cavemen at the end of the Cataclysm. Instead, what it seems to suggest is that humanity was at a point, but the vast majority of humanity didn't have guardians or got absorbed into things like Bellacor's empire and stuff, so that when chaos was banished, what was left of humanity fell. And they just lost a lot of their knowledge. They lost a lot of their tech. Their empires were wiped out, and they had to start from scratch. So from an elven perspective or a dwarf perspective, they look like goofy little cavemen. But in reality, the vast majority of them had just lost what had originally been theirs.
And worse, they were probably the lion's share of the forces of chaos.
Yeah. And they rebuilt into something new, which I love, because that shows a very kick-ass story of human adaptability and survivability, which is cool.
Yep, agreed with that.
Ricky Chapman, we've mentioned before that in our Chaos Wolf campaign, Cathay was important. We were surprised how much we guessed right with Yin Yin. Yes.
Yin Yin's good.
The Yin Yin that me and Andy have been kind of fangirling about from the little tidbits from Total War seems to be pretty accurate to the real Yin Yin, which is cool.
Yep, agreed.
Tribal, tinfoil hat theory, Miao Ying visited Sigmar. Could there be a line with Shukengun with... Okay, this is the second time, so we might as well just talk about it real quick.
Yep.
Could Miao Ying have had children with Sigmar? Yes. Yes, she could have. And I will say, if the roleplay game does not roll with that as a possible side story, then they are idiots, because that is a juicy-ass story.
Okay, so this, for those of you who follow Lawhammer, this is already a part of Lawhammer, but it's not with Sigmar. Because it's the obvious thing, because Games Workshop loves focusing on Sigmar. There is a better route for this, because we already have a dragon-blooded line in the Empire. The line that got wiped out later on.
Yeah,
the line of Drakvald. The Drakvalders. The Drakvalders, they were repeatedly said to be dragon-blooded. They were directly connected with dragons. They had the Drakvald forest that had big dragons inside it that they themselves were the only ones capable of plumbing into the depths of. But they ended up hunting dragons and trying to tame them rather than becoming at one with them, so to speak. So if you want to pursue this, you absolutely have a very logical, very lore-based route to take without having to go, it's another myth about Sigmar. I'm going to make everything about Sigmar, which Games Workshop loves to do, by the way. Games Workshop throws everything at Sigmar, forgetting that it's an entire place full of other peoples.
Poor Sigmar, man. Give the man a break.
Yeah.
Give the man a break.
I mean, he's already faced Nagashon and Everchosen and the betrayal of his best mates falling to chaos. He's definitely not the Emperor with the betrayal of his best mate falling to chaos. Completely different story. It's nice to try and depth and breadth, probably add breadth to it as well as depth, rather than just singly sitting on one figure of Sigmar.
Yeah, I would love that a lot, of it being the Drakvalder line, because that could also like be a fun explanation for why Drakvalders are maybe a little different, because even though it's been heavily distilled over many generations, they've got that little bit of dragon blood in them.
Yeah, quite. And that, for the few people who watch both Lorebeards and Lawhammer, that is something that goes right down to those who have the Drakvalder line, which includes, dun dun dun, the Todbringers. Yeah, because the Todbringers are not Teutigans. They came to rule Middenheim. They carry the blood of Bildhofen in them, which is the blood of Magnus the Pious, which is the blood of the Drakvald.
So there you go. So if you want your
go.
Who was our big bad shooting gun? It would have been Magnus.
It would have been Magnus the Pious, and Magnus the Pious had within him a power that was unexpected.
Jonathan Scott, odd question. But what would be the social status of children from a brothel frequented by Shukengunmi? It seems like an easy way to mess up harmony. So, one of the things that we don't know, Total War touches on this a bit, is we don't know how exactly and we won't know this until the roleplay game comes out on it. We just won't, because it's something Games Workshop won't care about, which is like, how does Shukengun line work? Like, how many are you just always a Shukengun if you've got a little bit of trackable dragon blood in you? Or is it like you have to be within a certain amount of generations, and then they're like, well, once you reach 1/64th dragon blood, then you're no longer a Shukengun, you're just a guy. So it depends. And I would guess that humans being humans, there are probably a lot of orphans and bastards of Shukenguns. out there in the world. And I would guess that you're right. It probably would mess up harmony, just like how a bastard of a royal line in the West would mess up the royal line. So what do? They don't talk about it.
Yeah. I think this is a fine example of where you start building your stories, building your conflicts within society. Grand Cathay, if you're using it from a roleplay side, is ripe for awesome, cool stories. And that's a fine example of one of them.
Yep. Ricky, Scotty, nice to see you guys again. I had a crazy conclusion earlier that I'll share in the next message. Oh, well, thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Only thing that matters is jade lion belly rubs. Yes. Rub the jade lion belly for good luck and hope it doesn't come to life and do what cats tend to do when you pet their bellies. Ricky, Scotty, in previous streams, we made the conclusion that we have no idea what magic was like pre-fall the old gates when we listened to Andy and Sotek. Yeah, so there's this book throws a giant wrench into
it really does,
because it's like winds of magic when the core rule book was like, no, the winds of magic weren't a thing until chaos showed up, so it's all whatever. We'll figure.
Yeah, so
who knows?
We made comment at the time about how in the core rulebook it didn't make a great deal of sense of the way magic came afterwards, and it was a massive change to the lore. And then along comes a book which is part of exactly the same set of books, because it's the first edition of Warhammer the Old World, one of the books that complements it, that says the winds of magic predate the cataclysm, and our Dragon Emperor was studying them back then, and it was the magic of the old ones. That's massive. I mean, it's huge. It's a complete rewrite of what came before again, but it makes so much more sense. This book, this later writing, updates the lore as we understand it, and also makes better sense of the lore. When we were going through our review of all the changes to the lore, we repeatedly said this is probably going to get rewritten by someone. Someone's going to write over this because this doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It's too fucking hard to explain. So they're just going
to... Someone's going to say, oh, I don't think we should have said that. And they're just going to write something different when they come to a different book. And it's exactly what's occurring as we work our way through the Arcane Journals. But the Grand Cathay book here makes it very clear that the Emperor back in the day was studying the winds of magic as we understand them today. The only thing that upsets me as a conclusion from that is that the rules inside this book do not provide any rules for the winds of magic at all. They only add a little bit of yin and yang magic. God damn it.
I was really butthurt that this book talks so much about the Astromancers and then didn't give us Astromancers. But, whatever.
That made me laugh.
They don't have them many yet, just so brilliant. I guess anyway, Down Man, one could argue, the whole dictator thing.
You could argue that this is a closer view of what modern day China is in comparison to modern day China's ideal. And I think the conflict of ideal versus reality is something that is an important potential story to have, and that includes for Grand Cathay. But the Grand Cathay description that we are given is broadly an ideal rather than a God voice view of what the reality of Cathay is.
Rick Scott said the Dragon Kingdom were born in pre-chaos and they all attuned to one wind. That suggests that at least magic was viewed or structured not dissimilar to modern Warhammer. Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. Although it's worth noting there's 9 of them, which is always fun.
Yes, the 9th child is a very fun mystery. Rick Scott, sorry for the off-topic.
And important too.
Yeah, sorry for the off-topic. No, I don't think that was off-topic at all. It's great.
No, it's
great.
Thank
you for the support. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, massively so.
Darius, you think they'll expand on the rivalry of Cracker Rock and Shenriang? That's not how you spell either of those. Who would win? Also,
who cares? You got it right.
Also, would King Ghidorah also a hubby ill
fix? A hubby he'll fix.
Oh, I don't know what that is. To be classified as an Emperor class dragon based on power. So King Ghidorah, would King Ghidorah be an Emperor class dragon? No, because he's an alien. But yes, if the Moon Empress would be considered one, then sure. Will they expand on that? I doubt it, unless the Dragon Ogres got like some focus. If the Dragon Ogres got some slightly expanded lore to go along with the Cathay lore, then probably yes. If they don't, then probably no.
Yeah, I'm super disappointed with the lack of external lore. And by that, I mean lore of the neighbors of Cathay. Even 4 or 5 sentences about all the core ones would have been lovely. That's only like a paragraph or 2. But all we really got was, in that point in time with the ogres, we pulled down pure warpstone from the sky. We're going to get onto that a little bit. That's a thing that happened. So we're going to get to that in a moment. But there's not a great deal of lore there.
Has Be'lakor taken talks direct with the Emperor? Probably, but we don't know.
Given what the Emperor Dragon's about to do in the timeline, it'll be interesting to say that he has not in some way interacted with him.
Yeah, I mean, considering that GW casually was like, "Oh yeah, he knows who Lord Croak is." If he knows who Lord Croak is, he probably knows who Be'lakor is. Ricky Chapman, do you think the dragons fought Drakenfels? There's a fun question. I don't know. That would be fun.
Do you think dragons fought Drakenfels? Given the Drakenfels background that we have as it stands, almost certainly not. Wrong part of the world, doing the wrong thing. Not in any way would there be any crossover. No.
Considering how much the Dragon Kids travel now, though, it's not impossible.
Yeah, it's not impossible. I mean, possibly at a far later date, but it doesn't seem very likely. That doesn't seem to be an obvious point of crossover.
Yeah. Dunman, headcanon. Xin Yang redirecting the magical wave unbalances how it is spread across the world and throws off the Slaane's containment plan. So if it wasn't for his unintentional action, they would have been able to fully close the gates. That's a fun theory. There's a lot you can play around with.
That's the sort of shit that I think would make for an interesting write-up for it. Not necessarily that alone, but the idea that the Slaane were moving in concert to do something great, but because of the responses of parts of the world that weren't underneath Lizardman control, a lot of their plans didn't land exactly as they would have liked, meaning that a lot of the first generation, second generation died as their various attempts were not just rebuffed because the power was all over the place, but was then pretty much drowned by magic and demonic influence. So something like that certainly makes sense because they weren't working in concert with the Lizardmen. They were not part of the great harmony on that side. And I think that's quite fun because it's almost ironic.
Yep, I agree. Anton Padubny. My head canon is that the Shadow Dragon is the one who's wandering the world in various forms and is a scout who arrives at different lands in various forms to study various places. Could be.
Could be, yeah.
Could be.
Yeah,
nice. Facil 456. It may be Games Workshop wanted to show humans didn't jump from stone to bronze, but showing varying levels of civilization around the world, much like ours was. Yeah, very much the case. Though I will note that it does seem like the old ones had humanity in a better state than was previously suggested.
Yeah.
And that those humans that didn't have like something specific, because we'll notice like the southern humans, so like Nehakara, Talea, and stuff like that, they had like a pretty nice jump start if you compare them to the old world humans, but they were kind of protected by the lizardmen down in the jungles. Cathay seems to have had the biggest head start, but they were protected by the dragons. The humans in the north, nobody protected them, and they got shit on big time. And they started from scratch after the cataclysm, it seems like.
Yep, seems fair.
What? Okay. Last one, then we gotta get back into stuff. Talked about Western noble bastards. First Duke of Northumberland, Hugh Percy was once called Hugh Spitzson. He had a bastard named James, who later adopted from the name before being shunned by the British aristocracy. You could shun them as such. James Spitzson heavily funded the way things in the newly independent USA closed Smithsonian. Oh, fun. That is fun. Thank you. All right. So Grand Cathay. So this is this book is also structured really weirdly. So instead of like just going through the history and then changing topics, they interrupt the history with this section that in the middle of this section it goes back to the history, which is so weird.
I'm going to bluntly say it. This next section feels like a different writer was tasked to do the next bit and just randomly started again. It's a weird one. I'm also going to say one other thing as well, that the old world is not a game that stands on its own in a way that Warhammer used to. And by that, I mean that it no longer refers to the Warhammer world as anything other than the world of legend in reference to Age of Sigmar. And this is something that's dropped multiple times throughout the book. And I've noted quite a number of people online getting peeved by this. Most of those are people who are Age of Sigmar, let's say deniers. They just prefer it didn't exist. But because of that, whenever they see something like the World of Legend come up as a name, it puts their back up. And it's interesting to see that it pops up several times in this book as well, that they're referencing themselves like the World of Legend is a name that they're already using to describe themselves. And it feels very out of not just God voice for the book, but it feels almost meta for the book as a whole. It's outside the fiction of the old world completely, because it's not something that the old world would ever use as a term. So it's super interesting to see it deployed several times. I bring it up here because it's used in the very first sentence of the introduction here.
Yeah, so there's some stuff here. This section is by far the most propaganda heavy. In my opinion. Like this one's goofy. Like it's just, I'll say it's just wrong.
Let's just take our first part, okay? I'm going to say that not only is it wrong, but it's also underplaying itself in ways that many people might not realize. The vast nation of Grand Cathay is one of the oldest civilizations, it claims. It's not. It's pretty much the oldest single one, arguably, other than the elves. The dwarves are not as consistent as what Grand Cathay has, because they extend significantly before, with the dragons taking over the humans around them and then slowly spanning out. Now, if you want to say Grand Cathay, when it became its whole thing, fair. But we all know how realms, nations always looked for their obvious genesis point. Their genesis point predates almost everything.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's worth noting.
Yeah, it's like if you define Grand Cathay as the nation of Xin Yang, then it's older than the old ones.
Yeah, and to make matters even worse, they don't rival elves and dwarves. They massively outnumber them. It's not just rivaling them. They're much, much, much further than them in almost all regards. The elves, which are split into at least 3, if not more factions, are weak by comparison to the extraordinary wealth of resource that Grand Cathay has, both in terms of land, in terms of people, and also in terms of harmony, which is worth adding because it gets repeatedly reinforced in this. They are not a rival for the elves and the dwarves. They are completely above them in almost all ways. The elves may individually have slightly better, no, they don't really have slightly better magic. The dragons are as good as them. The dragon-blooded have got their own form of magic that can easily match them almost toe for toe. The elves have no advantage over them pretty much at all. The only thing that you could argue... Yeah, the only thing you could argue is maybe they're better sailors, but this gets completely undermined later when it says, and Yin makes a lovely deal with the elves, meaning that they can go anywhere in the world whenever they want, contradicting all of the elven lore that we had previously, which had the high elves ruling all of the seas, except for the seas that the dark elves wouldn't let them get access to. The seas were elf domain. So it's super fascinating to see both how they underplay just how massive Grand Cathay is, and then after this just proceed to say actually it's massive.
Yeah,
and it's
also,
perfect.
I want to point out this book is also written very confusingly because it jumps backward and forward in time instead of going consistently. So like this section is very much written like it talks about them to the men of the West and talks about like how the old world feels about Grand Cathay, but then in the next paragraph it jumps back to the Cataclysm. So like timeline wise this book makes no sense. It's very weird because like you would think that an Empire of the East ruled by dragons takes place before the Folly of Shyama, and you're wrong. Fall of Shyama happens first, but I don't understand what happened with the editing of this book. It's very weird.
It's really weird because the next section, an empire in the East, just basically goes on to explain what their empire is and gets just facts weird. It says that Grand Cathay is rightly counted amongst the largest. No, it's the largest. It's the largest. It's not the most amongst the largest. It's the largest, most prosperous human nation in the known world. But they say, no, it's rightly counted amongst them. There's nothing that comes close to the size of Cathay. The Empire fits into a part of Cathay.
Yeah.
It's freaking huge.
They also say shit like, what distinguishes the Celestial Dragon Emperor's nation is that there's no strife from jealousy or greed, and there's no turmoil or dissent. What?
Yep, none.
Excuse me, sir. A page ago, you said they have internal rebellions that the dragons have to deal with. So which is it?
And it says, while all the other human nations are plagued with internecine warfare and proper civil issues, not Grand Cathay has none of them. This is going to be contradicted in more than one place later in the book and also earlier in the book. This section is actual, honest to goodness bullshit. And it's, for me, slightly annoying because it doesn't even acknowledge that it's bullshit. If it had been, right at the very top, something like this, I am the dragon-blooded Shugugan, and I tell you what the Empire in the East is. It's perfect! Then suddenly this entire section is great. This needed to be bounded into a box. It needed to be tightly posed as a description that's presented by an ambassador from the East, for example. But it very much isn't.
Yeah, genuinely, you could rip this page out of the book.
Yep, easily.
And it wouldn't change anything. You wouldn't even notice it's gone. And the timeline would make more sense. I would say this page should not be in this book.
Yeah, even the bits where it sits there. I mean, it's handy because it gives you their view of themselves, of just how much harmony matters, where the harmony is perfect. The fact that they're ruled by dragons at the top and what the dragons do.
Yeah, but it says all of this later, but better in the Land of the
Better, I agree. This entire page is...
It's a useless page.
It's just a waste. So let's get past that and go into the Folly of Shyama, because that fucking rocks.
This page is awesome. This page kicks ass. This is the next 2 pages are the best pages in the book.
This is where it actually kicks off.
This is where I was like, oh, this book's kind of cool, and then I got to this and I was like, oh, this is so good.
I'm exactly the same. I just read the Grand Cathay bit and I was like, who the fuck edited this? I almost want to give him a call and just say, dude, please send the book to me first and I'll restructure for you. I'll make it better. And I was sitting there going, oh crap, I'm gonna have to read this whole book. Okay, what's next? I went to Fall of Shyama and my eyes immediately went, oh, and I started reading.
So what this book does is it did what I never thought it would did, and they said, hey, you know those 4 dragon kids that are super mysterious and are totally not lost Primarchs? JK, here's what happened to one of them. And we get the Folly of Shyama, which basically tells us that, okay, you have your 5 kids that are still around who were each put in charge of, 4 of them were put in charge of one of the cardinal directions, and then Yuan Bo is like the diplomacy boss that makes sure everyone plays nice together. But then we learn about Shyama, who is basically the Grand General. So the Death Dragon, who is the eldest, she is flat out the oldest and is the most powerful, terrifying one of the dragons. And she's so big and bad that she becomes arrogant, which is super awesome. And also pokes some holes in what the previous page was saying about how cool and awesome and perfect Grand Cathay is. And she basically goes, hey, you know what? I'm going to go beat the shit out of the Chaos Gods. I'm just going to go kick their ass.
So just to make sure we've got our time scale, this is during the Cataclysm. So during the Cataclysm, when magic has gone wild, the gates have torn open, demons have flooded the world, entities like Be'lakor have taken control of the North and are rising themselves like gods amongst thousands of demon princes. This is an era of not just 4 chaos gods, but far more, because we're during the war of the gods, effectively, as they're attempting to destroy the world. We have ourselves Shyama, who goes, you know what? I can take them all on by myself, plus my army.
Yeah, which says a lot without needing to, which I like. Of that, okay, so this is like the Lizardman Empire has been pushed back very heavily. It's probably back to the Temple Cities by this point. Like we're in like the stages where like the dwarfs are, for the most part, like down hiding in their holes and everything. And it's like Cathay is apparently doing so well, like coordinating things and with these big, powerful dragons leading the charge, that their general becomes confident enough that she can go after chaos. But this thing does the smart thing, which is that it's not that she's just kicking ass and stuff, because the next paragraph makes it really clear what does happen is that Chaos looks at Grand Cathay and goes, we're going to fuck them up. And it plays them. It plays them like a fucking fiddle, which is what Chaos does best. And I love when they do this. When Chaos wins through corruption, as opposed to just raw, beat the shit out of you power.
Yeah, cut a long story short, the Folly of Shyama part is Shyama's decision to head north into the realm of chaos and fuck him up. And Shyama is capable of doing this and does so for some time, literally slaying everything in its path with absolute and horrifying ease. But such is the insidious way of nature, the insidious way of chaos, that the corruption of the land and the corruption they were surrounded by, and very possibly the Tzeentch or some other power, got into their heads. And Shyama herself was influenced and started to believe that her own forces were the forces of chaos, and she started tearing into her own without realizing what she was doing. When she eventually did, she wasn't driven away. She left in shame. She wasn't driven off by the great demons of the North. Quite the opposite. She turned tail and went back because they weren't capable of stopping her. The only thing that could stop Shyama was Shyama. Until, of course, we hit the Spirit Dragons section.
Yeah. And I'll say I love, like, they don't have a lot of space, but the imagery they evoke is fantastic. Of, like, you can see in your head of Shyama, like, it literally says, and you can just see Tzeentch being such a dick about this, of she's reveling in her victory when the illusion dissipates. When she really, like, she's at the height of, like, look how almighty I am. And the Dark Gods go, yeah, you're right. Look at you. And it's like, ooh.
And it's not just the blood of demons that sit upon Shyama's claws. It is also the blood of brave Cathayans who had given their lives to the dragon rather than for the dragon. And such was the dragon's shame. She turns tail and flees, driving what remains of her army before her, slaughtering many, leaving the rest to die. The Cathayans are defeated, but they are defeated by Shyama.
Yep. And this then takes us to the Spirit Dragon, where Shyama goes home. And remember, there's no Great Bastion at this point.
Yeah.
And as Shyama's approaching the north, where the demons have always attacked from, the Chaos Gods go, hey, look at this. We could do this trick one more time. And show that they are so much more powerful than Cathay gave them credit for. Not through force of arms, but just through, to put it bluntly, a simple trick. And the simple trick is making Shyama and her soldiers fleeing before her look like a rampaging legion of demons. And the full might of Miao Ying is brought against her sister. And the horror of it is so good. You can see Shyama is not defending herself. She's not thinking about defending herself. She's going, oh my God, I'm finally home. What a horrible thing. I want to see my sister. I need to go to my family for comfort. And then her sister is just waiting for the proper moment. They get close enough. They see the white of their eyes. Fire. And just massacres Shyama and her army.
So the remnants of Shyama and her army killed by Miao Ying. Love it. And this is not unknown. The Dragon Emperor in the south senses this is coming, so makes, with speed, an effort to arrive in the battlefield before horror should ensue, but arrives too late to find that Shyama has been killed by Miao Ying, which is all kinds of awesome. Finally, we're showing that Cathay is not perfect, that not only do the external chaos constructions and effects cause them to have issues with each other, but that they just don't always win. And they do not win. It goes badly for them.
Yeah, and I love that. Here we get the whole thing about that Shen Yang uses his magic to bind Shyama into Cathay itself. He binds her into. We get the mystery of the Spirit River solved. Shyama is dead. And she is put into a death slumber, and everything that she is kind of reconstituted as the Cathayan underworld. And there's also kind of like a horrible irony in that she becomes the guardian of all of the people that she horribly massacred.
Yeah, it's also worth noting as well that Shyama at this point is dying, is not dead. So there is definitely an argument to be made here that Shyama is not strictly speaking dead yet. That Shyama's spirit has instead been moved over and into what is effectively the afterlife for Cathay. So a spirit that is not strictly speaking dead, and certainly not undead. So a dragon that's neither dead nor alive in exactly how she now manifests, but a dragon that was once the most prideful, the most powerful, the most magically capable of all the dragons, the firstborn daughter who has now met a rather cruel and unjust end at the hands of her own sister. Something that almost certainly would cause problems between Miao Ying and the other dragons, and will also cause problems for Miao Ying, whose character probably at this point changes significantly, because everything that she once was allowed this to occur. So she's going to become something different to ensure that never happens again.
Yeah, and I will note that for all the people that are like, oh, Shen Yang Solo, blah, 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 this, in my opinion, is his most impressive feat in the book, where he takes Shyama's spirit and binds her into Grand Cathay to become he creates an afterlife. This is by far the most fucking ridiculous thing he does in the book. And a lot of people don't realize it because it's not like a martial feat. But this is like to basically channel the dead of Cathay into his daughter's spirit, which may be what is allowing her to persevere in her state, is fascinating. We don't have enough time to get like super duper into it. Genuinely fucking fascinating. I love it.
The next section, the Wrath of the Celestial Dragon, I think it's worth getting through a little bit more before we move into Land of Dragons.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Because we need to get right through these.
Yeah.
The next section, the Wrath of the Celestial Dragon, is one of the more interesting ones because the results of this is obviously we now have a Cathayan afterlife that now gets formed. We have a shattered emperor whose first daughter's dead. The Moon Empress comes over and the emperor turns to her for help. And she says, look, we can't let this stand. We must appear like we are a solid, consistent force. And she then removes the memory of the firstborn daughter from almost everybody. Just removes it so that no one needs to deal with that great loss. Removes the entire event, and in her grief, she is gone. Now, you could argue she did this because she herself didn't want it in a sort of eternal sunset of the mind, if you wish, the spotless mind. Or alternatively, she did it for very political reasons. We know that she's a very political figure from our other versions of her and how she works. She's manipulative, exactly. Yeah. So it's very likely that it was both through grief and through what she believed to be the best outcome for Grand Cathay and its long-term process, and probably maybe even the best outcome for her husband, who mentally is collapsing at this point and not dealing with it at all well.
Yeah, so two things about this for me is that Kuei Yin is fucking terrifying. The fact that Kuei Yin has the power to make an entire nation, because she doesn't just remove the memories of Shiyama's death, she removes what Shiyama looks like from everyone's memory. No one can remember what Shiyama looked like. And except for like maybe her and Shen Yang. And then she replaces all of their memories and says, oh yeah, Shiyama has always been the guardian of the underworld. Always. And she does that to a nation. With a ritual. That is like the cult. That's like the Emperor of Shadow Wizards of the Empire going, Jesus Christ, levels of scary. Like,
this is big stuff. And our Dragon Emperor now makes a decision. He decides he's going to kill the Chaos Gods. It's pretty blunt. He decides that's it. No, they have been a threat against me for centuries now, and we have been fighting a defensive war. Shiyama tried to do something about it and failed. Where Shiyama failed, I will succeed.
Yeah, and though there is a funny note of him realizing that chaos is just getting stronger and stronger. Yeah. So like that
it's got to be stopped.
It has to be stopped, and it's now or never. And
if you're looking for a strong reason for the antipathy that the Dragon Emperor has for gods, we have the strongest of reasons here.
Yeah, so
he already didn't like them.
Yeah, and this next part it's just fun. Great Undertaking is just fun.
Yeah, it is.
It does the thing that a lot of people have always fanboyed over, but never really was practical in the setting. Which is, what if an entire nation just took their army and went and tried to go punch Chaos in the dick? And that's basically what happens. Is that
and interestingly, largely succeeds.
Yeah,
it's written in a very propaganda-esque fashion, and in some respects says that Shiyama should have just waited. Shiyama should have persuaded her dad to help, because if they'd all gone together, they might have succeeded in a way that Shiyama by herself could not. But as they described, Shiyama's great flaw was pride, so I quite like that.
Yeah, I love the idea, like, especially with what we know of Tzeentch, that Tzeentch knows that if Shiyama had been with them, it would have been bad. So he lures her out by herself. So anyway, they go out there, they have a big fight. And a lot of people, this is another one of the sections where people are like, oh, Shen Yang's so OP. It's not just Shen Yang, it's Shen Yang, all 8 of his remaining kids, his wife, and his entire nation behind him. Like, that's a pretty considerable amount of power being thrown in somebody's face.
Yeah, there's only one line in here which does give a level of OP that many people might not expect. And that's that the dragons, as they come forward, not Shen Yang, but the dragons, all of them, and their combined mastery of the winds of magic peaked and was better than the demon gods themselves. And that was pretty pretty impressive shit. The very best demons that they have could not stand toe-to-toe against the ferocity of the wounded dragons and how absolutely pissed off they were. And you might go, well, that's bullshit. Well, one, maybe it's not, because they've already been described in a rather peak way. But the more important, too, is that this is not the only effort going to wipe out demons across the world at this point. The Slan are moving in concert, not that the elves know it, but with the elves. The elves at this point are dragging the magic out of the world, weakening the demons. This is all happening at about the same time. Grimnir himself, the one-man walking god beast, is marching up there, walloping demons left, right, and center as well. It's an enormous war, and they're just one of the many, let's say, wedges that are driving towards the Chaos Gates, attempting to stop them, and they are getting weakened again and again. So they're not going against Chaos at their strongest anymore. They're going against Chaos, which has not just got a spear in its side and a sword in its gut and an axe in its head, but they're also having all of their body torn apart by Slan from several thousand miles away.
This to me was one of my favorite parts, because for me, this is the part that makes my heart thrum for Warhammer Fantasy, which is that this is that moment that showed that the secret to killing Chaos and genuinely beating it, even though funny enough it survives this, which shows just how horrible it is that all of the other races of the world had to work together. Harmony, which is
it absolutely justifies what Grand Cathay becomes. Because when Grand Cathay does work in harmony with the rest of the world, Chaos is roundly defeated. And magic gets sucked from the world. And apparently, according to the Old World book, suddenly the winds of magic become a thing.
Just saying, and all of the insane bullshit storms of magic subside. Yeah. So this part, it's just fun.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, gonna get quickly caught up with some stuff.
Do some chats.
Antonio Runza, the 9 sons of the Dragon Emperor, one for each book of Nagash. Coincidences I don't believe in. 9 children, because I actually believe I was talking to somebody that was talking about that we know it's actually 4 girls, 4 boys, and then the mystery child. Because which who knows, the mixed child who almost assuredly fell to Chaos, but we'll have to see one day. Diamond, ignoring how the size of nations is warped on maps, Cathay is about 4.5 times as big as the Empire. Also, no heavy taxation. We're all treated great. Sure. Oh, hello, peasant spearmen. Well, yeah, Cathay very much has this it's a propaganda beast. Like there are different groups of society, there are rebellions, there are people that want different things, and humans are gonna human,
Grand Cathay is freaking huge.
Yeah.
I mean, the Empire is already huge.
Andy, thank you very much. Just tuning in. I'm way behind right now, but just want to say I love you guys. Content really makes me think. Glad you're doing better, Andy. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciated. And I am doing better.
A filthy casual 64. Hear me out. Shin Tzu is Fling Fang. As the light of hope, Chaos needed to corrupt hope, and Archaon needed to kill hope as preparatory actions to marshal in the true end times. That could be the case. Shin Tzu, as we do know, vanishes into the north. She's last seen going up into the northern Chaos Wastes a little bit before the Great War against Chaos, and was never seen again. So maybe she becomes corrupt and is later killed by Archaon. Could be the case. Could be that she's doing something. Who knows?
I think that's as good a story as any that might be spun.
Yep. Listener Chris, feels like the Great Bastion was also used to prevent a mass illusion like this from happening again. Yeah, I agree. Like, we know it stops the winds of magic from crossing into Cathay.
I think that you're right, but one feels that the initial response against this is not required, and it's why the Great Bastion comes so much later, because they believe they've defeated Chaos. There's that strong sense that they believe they've won, and the rise of the next Everchosen is going to come as somewhat of a surprise to many. So that's why the Great Bastion takes a long time before it's built, and I think you're right that one of its core design goals will be to ensure that the dragons are never taken by surprise in the way that they had been previously.
Yep. Downman, I wonder if having the fall of Shyama directly after the Cathay is Perfect page was meant as a contrast of this is what they want to present versus this reality, but just wasn't clearly pitched as in-universe propaganda. Yeah, because it's definitely God voice. Like,
yeah.
It's not even like Shen Yang says this. It just is like, this is what it is.
Dinoman, I would love to say that was the point, but if it was, they messed it up.
Yeah. So how many years are there between Bastion and Shiama's River? The Great Bastion, I think, is made in like 1800 years before Sigmar.
It's 1800 IC, I think.
Yeah, and Shiama's death is probably somewhere in the ballpark of... So the vortex is formed 4,400... Is 4,420 is the vortex. So probably like a few years before that, give or take.
Yeah.
So probably
about 500. About 400 or 500 in comparison to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so probably like 3,000 years difference.
Yeah.
Ish.
That's about that.
Yeah. Phil, sounds like Kuei Yin used the same super Olgu spell the Grey Seer Council invokes every year to erase the traces of the Skaven's existence. Well, hers is much more effective, but yes.
Yeah, and hers is still in place.
Yeah, hers apparently she cast once and it just worked. And I will say it works so good that we have that lovely short story that has the gaggle of crowmen, but that lovely short story that works really well where Yuan Bo, the changeling, very interestingly, the changeling turns into Shiama, and Yuan Bo goes, I think that's my sister Shiama, but I don't know what she looks like. I've only heard what she looks like, which makes a lot of sense of that. Like, I will say it is gut-wrenching that Kuei Yin made her own children forget what their sister even looked like. Like, they have no memories of their sister.
Think how much easier that is for Miao Ying, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, so I have a personal theory about like the whole thing of Miao Ying is so cold and aloof and so standoffish from all of her siblings and everything, which we hear a lot about. I think something that I don't know if they intend this, but this is the way I read it, is that I love the idea that Miao Ying still has the trauma of what she did, but she doesn't know why.
Yeah. If you're wondering what that feels like, imagine when you have a nightmare and you wake up in the morning, but you don't remember your dream, but you're still shaken by the nightmare and you still feel it. And you know how terrifying or awful that dream was, and you've woken up and you're like, holy shit, but you don't have the memory of the dream in mind. That happens to a lot of people, and I feel that that's broadly speaking where she is. The classic trauma that you had in childhood that you don't remember but affects everything that you do at a later date, and I think it speaks rather deeply to who Miao Ying has become.
Yeah, because I would love the idea that in Kuei Yin trying to kind of find the easy way out, she made it where Miao Ying can never heal. She'll never heal from this because she doesn't know the source of her trauma. And if she doesn't know the source, she can't address it.
Yeah, absolutely. And learning the source of her trauma would probably help her significantly to develop and become arguably a better dragon. She is a deeply flawed individual if you take a look at her character and what she's become. But that's because she's got raw emotions that she can't process that have turned her into really quite a terrifying figure also to her siblings, and how she deals with them. So yeah, I think there's a whole lot of really cool stories that could be told there. Do I think Games Workshop will tell those stories? I doubt it, but who cares? That's what we're here for, to fill in all those gaps and have some fun with.
That's all. Like maybe GW making Cathay OPs to set up for reveals later. I mean, I doubt it, because they tend to more like when they want to change things, they just retcon them as opposed to being like, aha, look, reveal. They just change it.
Yeah, agreed. And also, I don't think that Cathay is OP at all. I can see you easily thinking that, but when we consider what the elves had done, when we consider what the dwarves have done, we consider what the lizardmen have done, there is nothing in this army list that is bigger or better per se. What we have is just another Warhammer faction. This happens to be one of the biggest factions in terms of land that the Warhammer world has to offer, that's being presented as this perfect faction, but when you look between the lines, or indeed in the statements in some places, is about as far from perfect as you can get. Perfection is the ideal, not the reality.
Yeah, one of my favorite criticisms I saw leveled at this book, because I think it showed people not having good great ideas. Sotek. For a second, I thought Lindsay was making a joke about me being in Scotland caused trauma that people don't remember, but I realized that I read it wrong, and the idea of it made me laugh. But what I will say is that I saw a really bad take, in my opinion, about this book, which is someone who went, oh my God, I can't believe Cathay is so OP that they made Anarian seem like a little bitch because the Cathayans were killing like so many of the greatest and most powerful demonic servants. And it's like, guys, the Celestial Dragon Emperor had his entire nation's army and 9 other dragons of similar OP bullshit level power by his side. Anarian was with his 1 dragon. That's it. And they were up against 4 greater demons. They were outnumbered by greater demons.
Yeah,
and
good
they
times.
still won.
I don't think in any way have they made Anarian look like a smaller force than he is at all.
Yeah, like just there have been some silly takes about this book.
Yeah.
I'm just picturing the vast army of demons rampaging toward the forces of Cathay positioned on a hill with Miao Ying. She says one word fire, a whole barrage of artillery transferred down, the army is slaughtered. Spell dissipates, Miao sings the carnage of the dying thought of her sister, and then a green logo comes with should have got the Specsavers. Oh my god! If only our vision had been 2020. That's funny. Tyrant, welcome back from Nurgle's Loving Embrace. Andy.
Thanks, Tyrant. It's appreciated.
Why does the Empire think of chaos as their arch enemy when greenskins and vampires have done way more damage to them? Because authors be silly. Like spiritually, there are many people in the Empire, like especially around Sigmar, that would be like, chaos.
But even Sigmar, he was born to the attack of orcs who killed his mother. Or greenskins are the core component of what Sigmar began his life fighting. So yeah, it's more of a writer thing.
Yeah, and granted, your mileage will vary depending on like where you are in the Empire. Like if you're up further north, then yeah, they're probably more anti-chaos because they have to deal with like Norskins all the fucking time. Whereas in like Middenheim has like a very strong anti-chaos legacy, so like that's something they deal with like a lot of beastmen and shit. Whereas like in the south, it's probably going to be much more anti-greenskin focus, and then over in like near Sylvania, it's going to be more of an anti-vampire thing.
Yeah.
But it's it's just writers being silly, is what I would say.
Yeah, it's because we know out of time that the existential threat to the Warhammer world is chaos. It's ultimately the one that will destroy it. But in the world, that is not broadly known at all. It is believed by certain factions, but the reality of day-to-day life is exactly as you put it. The wolf riders that are coming down from the mountains or whatever else it might be, they're the real terrors.
When did the Cathayans have a Skaven as the Grand Vizier of Court? How would they just fight? So that hasn't happened yet. So this book takes place at the very start of what's going to become be known as the time of darkness and disharmony. It hasn't happened yet. It's about to happen. It's mostly the 2300s, so we're not there yet, is the simple answer.
It's coming.
Yeah. Seth 45er. In Chinese mythology, forest dragons are considered to be creatures of chaos. So if one of the kids is chaotic, it would be the one that lives in the woods eating travelers and training beastmen. Yeah, I mean, could be that. I don't know. We'll have to. I don't know if they're ever going to dive into one of that. The ninth. That I would be shocked if they do. I feel like it's one of those things where GW is going to want to keep it a mystery. But I mean, I would have said the same thing about Shyama, and then they just gave us Shyama. So I don't know. And
they gave us a good Shyama at that. So yeah.
Twisted Alfonso 1. Moses, sorry your son contracted Letma. Pharaoh, what's Letma? Moses, let my people go. That's terrible considering his son is like murdered by the angel of death. Sotek, Andy, did you contract Amada? What's Amada? Nothing. What's Amada? Okay. Thank you. I didn't realize Hammond had changed his name. He's Twisted Alfonso now.
She realized.
Yeah. Okay. So next part.
One more.
Oh, I missed this one. Really hope we get a special character like Satang, but for the other types of Sentinels. We know there's 2. So there's Satang the Watcher, who is he fights as if he uses yin, but he's considered the yang one. And then because he fights at range. And then there's the melee one who has the power of like yin within him, which is Yin Sing. So Yin Sing and Satang are which, yang is in his name, Satang. So it's got yang in it. And then you've got Yin Sing who has yin in his name. So, there you go. There you go. But, all right, we're on to the Land of the Dragons.
Land of the Dragons.
Yeah. So this one basically talks about what happens kind of immediately after the Cataclysm. So this is when the Celestial Dragon Emperor discovers the lores of yin and yang. He basically figures out how to divide up the winds into these 2 categories.
Yeah, I find this quite interesting because we clearly have them using the 8 winds of magic before this. And it said again and again and again they're using this. And this is the point with once the winds have calmed down again and we no longer have chaos around, they've decided they're going to study the magic properly and they form up their own versions with the yin and yang versions. Yes, go for it.
My theory that I think could work really well for this is that this is how they're trying to reach that old level of power. That, like, because there's so much less magic in the world, they have to compensate to try and reach that level of magical ability by combining winds as opposed to just using them as they used to.
Yeah, I think that's fine as a theory. We clearly have a world that's significantly less magical than it was before because it's been drained out of the world by the Great Vortex. And they are looking to have similar levels of power as they had during the Cataclysm. And let's be blunt, the amount of magic washing over the world at that point was enough that they were able to go toe-to-toe with chaos and win, even though it was getting sucked out of the world as well at the same point. So, yeah, I think that's as good a theory as any, looking to see how magic can be used as a better tool to defeat their enemies. It's worth noting that this is a period where chaos has been pushed back and it's nothing more than a distant threat that probably isn't perceived as much of a threat at all. And if we go with this version of the growth and prosperity of Cathay, then Grand Cathay has been a thing since the Cataclysm. It is a thing. It consolidates its power. It goes into technology and magic. It creates a whole bunch of new technologies, including flying machines, including black powder weapons of various types, including the great sentinels that will be protecting their borders and their crops and their cities and elsewhere. And all the great cities that we become aware of for Cathay are also founded. Broadly speaking, the Celestial Dragon goes, harmony for us all, let's get to work. And they go to work.
Yeah, though I will note this is another one of those weird part of the books where like it starts moving forward in time and then in following pages it jumps
right back again.
Which I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, like Andy said, this also does talk about they build the wall. So that they built the Great
Bastion. 1800 IC, because they've not given the Cathay its own dating system, because why bother giving Cathay its own thing? Let's just use Sigmar again. So we all run everything by Sigmar's dating system. So it's 100 IC, 1800 IC. After centuries of resurgent chaos, they decide that they need the Bastion and they build the Great Bastion and slap it in place by 1800 IC. And if you go take a check at everything that was done to do that, it was a particularly significant output of power from the Dragon Emperor.
Yep. Then we get the Wisdom of the Celestial Dragon, which talks about the creation of the Whooshing Compass. Neat.
Yep.
Which, of course, we have talked a ton about. We get some mention of the alchemists, who are also sadly not playable
Just
yet.
Worth noting, if you don't know what the Whooshing Compass is, cut a long story short, it channels the winds of magic in a fashion across Grand Cathay that the dragons can control and use to benefit Grand Cathay as a whole.
Yep. And then we get some stuff, once again, talking about, like, oh, they have the best black powder in the world, which, like, neat, cool. And then there's some funny stuff about, like, we're the best humans ever. We're the cool humans. We totally don't have problems.
Yeah, this section where it's like, and our stuff's better than dwarf stuff, and although no dwarf would ever accept it, everybody knows Grand Cathay's stuff is better, and you know our magic's better than everyone else's magic, and although they may not accept it, they are. And while everyone else has got war, we don't have war because we've got harmony. We've got harmony. This entire section, even though it's in God voice, feels so weird because we have other parts in the same God voice that later say all of this stuff isn't real. There is interscene issues. There are constant internal conflicts. So it's a bit weird, this entire section.
Yeah, the Harmony of the Dragon section, the first paragraph is goofy as fuck. It is the most paragraph sentence or paragraph in the entire book, and it's just dumb. It's a dumb paragraph where it's like, how could the subjects do anything other than throw themselves before the service of the Emperor? It's like that should have been written by like some absolute idiot that's like in the court and is talking about how cool Cathay is, because that's how it comes off. It is obnoxiously written.
Indeed, and even after that paragraph, the next section says, you know, this philosophy, as in this way of thinking, this thought process, not this reality, but it's presented as reality. So be aware, if you are accepting all of this material from these paragraphs as true, that Cathay is in a state of perfect harmony at all times. It never has any internal warfare. All of its citizens are entirely happy with their lot. None of their citizens ever will dream for more. The dragon-blooded Sugargun rule over them with absolute sincerity and purity of purpose and cause. There is no internal conflict. And it comes off as a bit, for the Warhammer world, a bit weird.
Yeah, ignore page 4 where it said that they have rebellions, and also ignore all of
that didn't happen.
Yeah, ignore all of the genuinely bomb-ass quotes directly from GW and Total War that talk about all of the serious internal issues that Cathay is dealing with. Ignore all that. Quite. Absent Emperor. So this part, I don't know why it's this early in the book, because it is much better later in the book. But basically, this builds up to. The Celestial Dragon Emperor is implied to be trying to find a way to heal the rifts. He's trying to close the Chaos Gates.
He's decided he wants, as we said earlier, his earlier mission is stated quite clearly. He wants to kill the Chaos Gods. He wants to bring this to an end. He's seeking a very disharmonious outcome, and it's revenge. He wants revenge because he wants his people to have harmony and for his lost daughter to not be lost. And he intends to bring them down. And that means that he falls into long periods of what his people see as inactivity, where he is contemplating, thinking, or perhaps just, having a laugh. Who knows what he's doing? But he takes long periods away, and sometimes he goes off to other places with his wife to study, sometimes months apart, and later centuries ago. And the current realm, which again we're using imperial dating, so we're sitting at 2000 IC, has no emperor in it at all, nor no moon empress. In fact, this incredibly important fact and the amount of impact it would have upon Grand Cathay, the last 300 years without their ruler being seated there, is just skimmed over with a quick half paragraph.
Yeah, so this is the wildest part of this book for me, because when I was reading it, I thought they were getting rid of that because everything's about Xin Yang. So you're like, oh, so Xin Yang's relevant to what's going on. And then you go, oh no, they didn't change anything from the Total War stuff is all the exact same. Total War is all 100% lines up with this. They're using the exact same stuff.
Yep.
He's been gone. Him and the wife have been gone for 300 fucking years.
And then they say the impossible. Though this extended absence has caused a degree of turmoil and disharmony, the people of Grand Cathay believe wholeheartedly that the Celestial Dragon's Emperor's return will herald the coming of a new age, i.e., if we just scrape it all away, there's been civil war pretty much since the day he left, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But whoever wrote this clearly doesn't like the idea of a disharmonious Cathay and just brushes it under the carpet with, and some people think it'll get better when he comes back. It's not that bad, really. Okay, we cool with that. Let's go. Let's move on to the next bit.
If this had been written by an astromancer coordinating with the Empire, he would have downplayed it because he wouldn't want the Empire to know that Cathay is basically having horrible civil war right now.
It's basically all this whole section requires is just a pair of quotation marks at the beginning, a pair of quotation marks at the end, and a little bit saying the incredibly blinded astromancer who only believes in the dragons. By the way, dragons are cool. KK. The end. Sorted.
Things are so good right now, but please, God,
good.
I hope he comes back any day now, please.
There are some people who say we're in disharmony, but we all know that when the Dragon Emperor returns, it's going to be brilliant. Why is it going to be brilliant when he returns? Is it not brilliant just now? I didn't say that!
Yeah. It's I will say, so for those that are unaware, so what this means is that we are in the time of darkness and disharmony. We're in it right now.
Right now, you'd never know from this book.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it, but the time of darkness and disharmony stretches from when the Celestial Dragon Emperor and the Moon Empress leave in 2000 to about 20...
The Great War Against Chaos, pretty much.
No, it's actually a little bit after that. It's I think they come back in 2380 or something like that, because the Great War Against Chaos happens, and one of the things that happens during the Great War Against Chaos is that the Monkey King invades Cathay. And the Skaven as well. So, which hopefully means that the Skaven will come back from being a legacy faction because they're supposed to play a huge part in what's going on in Cathay. Because Clan Eshin escaped a lot of the shit that happened in the big Civil War, and the big thing Clan Eshin is supposed to do is cripple Cathay. And hopefully we'll get to see that. But now you would think, based on the way the book is designed, that would be the end of the history section, because then it starts showing off artwork, and then it goes, haha, JK, we're jumping back to right after the Cataclysm.
Oh man, this book. It's really interesting in how they've presented the information. But yeah, we go back in time again to Grand Cathay and the old world, because they need to tie it through to the old world. And we now get our sections on what happens with Grand Cathay from the Cataclysm through to today as it moves out diplomatically and speaks to others.
Yeah, so Disdain of the Dragon. This is, fun fact, the only part of the book that talks about the Lizardmen, which is just kind of fun. And it basically just notes that Shen Yang noticed most of his kind being murdered by Saurian warhosts. Yep. So we know that the early dragons did fight the Lizardmen, and they lost badly.
So we're right back to pre-Cataclysm again.
Yeah. And then the other races and the rest of them like went into deep slumbers and stuff. And you're like, okay. And then we get the whole thing about like he turns himself to a human so he can hide among them and basically just
I think it's worth noting, just so this is the third time now that we are going back to the beginning. We've managed in hardly any pages to return back to pre-Cataclysm for a third time and state quite a lot of the same information. They kind of repeat a bit.
A lot of space in this book.
There's so much space wasted
because space is so valuable in how tiny this book is.
Yeah. Now,
I agree with Andy. Every time there's like a big bold print, it feels like it's a completely new author.
It does, and it doesn't feel like the. I mean, I can't believe that's the case. But if it is, seriously, dude, you done fucked up.
Well, if it's the same author, it's even weirder because
it is even weirder, isn't it? Yeah. Because it does starts over each time. So we go back to the beginning of time again and we get another repitching, but this time the entire repitching of this tale is very much about how the dragons have dealt with those around them, really.
Yeah. Now, that being said, there is a very nice part, which is the last paragraph, which tells us why Grand Cathay is a human nation. And it basically says Shen Yang really does not fucking like elves and dwarfs. He really doesn't like them. He is disgusted by elves, and hates the dwarfs for murdering dragons. Which I will say, this supports me and Andy's theory that the dwarfs were designed by the old ones to kill dragons.
Yeah, it's something that's become a part of Lorehammer, right from it's a thing that somebody said. Yeah, they're dragon killers, and
Shen Yang knows that, and he hates them for it.
Yeah.
Which I like this. I like that they show that Shen Yang. One of the things I talked about in my stream that I still agree with is that Shen Yang likes humanity, though I don't think it's necessarily because he's beneficent. I think it's because humanity, in comparison to the others, is less dangerous and easier to manipulate.
Yeah, humanity. It's easy to manipulate big, large swathes of flesh, and you can pose as them. Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Moon Empress.
Yeah, they don't live as long. They're easier to trick, and they're useful tools.
And they're not living along makes them extraordinarily useful, because by the time they learn everything, they're too old and they die. Meaning that you can manipulate what the people know within their generations.
Yeah, Doom of the Sky Titans. This section is fun, but also really disappointing.
Disappointing. It's massively disappointing. When I read Doom of the Sky Titans, I was like, ooh, and then I read it and I was like, oh.
Yeah. So on one hand, we get the idea that Celestial Dragon Emperor gave the Sky Titans black powder, and he basically pulled a United States CIA and basically gave weapons to the Sky Titans, hoping it would destabilize the ogres. And it didn't work because the ogres are just they're too many, and the Sky Titans are just too isolationists. They didn't go aggressive against the ogres, they just defended themselves, which is not what Shen Yang wanted. So then he goes from I'll arm another race that I hope fights them to I'm going nucular. And I'll say that this does not explain anything.
Nothing. I was like, what the fuck?
The thing that I wanted from this section that I was really disappointed is, why did Shen Yang feel that such a drastic, over-the-top idea was necessary, and it doesn't explain anything about why he does this to the ogres.
We had discussed this one significantly with the Maw stream, where we went in depth into where the Maw came from, how it became what it was, and how much of a fuck up it actually was, how much it totally screwed with things, how bad a move it was. And I was hoping for some sort of and this move was done in desperation, and it was tricked, it was fucked up, something went wrong, similar to the story with Shyama earlier. Something didn't go according to plan. But no, it was just, no, we pulled down a meteorite of pure warpstone because for reasons that showed them ogres. Ha ha ha. What the fuck?
Yeah, so I'll say that this section is just the last paragraph especially is just bad. It should have included it should have shown why the ogres were
what the ogres were doing. Why was it so desperate?
Yeah, if he's such a big bad with his nation that he could take on the dark gods themselves, what was so scary about the ogres that they went, nope, have to nuke them from orbit?
Yeah.
Like there's a story.
And why the fuck didn't you nuke the fucking Chaos Gate?
Yeah. So there's a story here that's not told. Which is a shame. And also, they don't do a good job of when we had Andy Hall on the show, and one of the chats we had with Andy Hall and how they developed Cathay and stuff, it's very heavily implied that the Celestial Dragon Emperor oopsed with the Great Maw. Like, they did call down a comet, but they didn't realize it was a pure Warpstone comet. Now, so this confirms that it's pure Warpstone, which shows that, that's a huge fuck up. It's not like it was like they basically threw a piece of Morslib at the ogres. And this book the paragraph makes it seems like it was completely intentional, and it's like, no, absolutely not. Like, with how much
you can tell it's not, because the very next one, which is going across land and sea, has them struggling with the fact that the entirety of one of their borders is now Warpstone, and they try to figure out how they can get across it, because they're an expansionist, open people by nature. They like to trade, deal, and work with others. So they start going, well, maybe we can fly over it using the sky lanterns. They couldn't get enough provisions, and they eventually moved to large trains that were going to make their way across this exceedingly dangerous territory. It's one giant fuck up that's not pitched as that.
The only thing I can think is that this book really reeks of not wanting, like, it feels like the author was forbidden from talking about the legacy factions unless there was no choice. Because there's no mention of Skaven, who should have been mentioned. There's no mention of Dark Elves at all, even though the Dark Elves are
Skaven. Yeah, the Dark Elves. Fucking hell.
Are like one of the biggest antagonists to Grand Cathay, and they're not mentioned in this book ever.
Nippon.
And it to me it feels like there was someone at GW saying, no, don't talk about these because they're not playable right now. You're not allowed to talk about them.
Yeah, and that's just a nonsense, because nobody expects you to be able to play with everything that's been down. There's been hints of the hinterlands of Koresh, Nippon, Grand Cathay throughout the books. The Ogre Kingdoms are constantly talking about Cathay all the way through the Ogre Kingdoms books. Nobody immediately went, well, where's my Cathay army? Some people obviously did because they wanted it, but there was no expectation that it was realistically going to come. This book should have had mention of Nippon. It should have had mention of the Kingdoms of Ind. It should have had mention of all of their surrounding parts, even if it's just a mention here, a mention there, a magical artifact that's derived from Nippon rather than just a whole bunch of random names and the occasional Chinese sounding one. It's it's some weak sauce here.
Yeah, so I really feel that because the ogres were legacy, they just didn't want to go into detail, and it's a shame.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe in a future book we'll get more details, but not here. Across land and sea, this part is kind of fun. We get some cool stuff about Yin Yin and Zhao Ming that doesn't contradict. Like, it basically just goes with what we thought about them. Yin Yin's like, whoa, I'm going to go explore, and is awesome and young and cool. And Zhao Ming goes, hey, look at all this warpstone. Look at all this cool alchemical shit that totally won't make me go crazy in 200 years. Which is great.
Yeah, it's nice. We get the idea that the dragons are expanding outwards, and the only place they are interested in expanding outwards is basically the old world and anything that attaches to the old world. So the only place they give any real detail to is what's happening in Nehekara, which is the only civilization in these early years that pretty much exists in the old world, kind of forgetting all the elves and the dwarves that were kicking around just before that. They don't. The whole elf dwarf thing is ignored. It just doesn't happen to them.
Yeah,
all they see is Nehekara.
They touch on it later, which is stupid because it should have happened before.
Here,
this book is out of order. It's literally
massively out of order.
Anyway, so we get our Nehekara section.
Which is fine.
Yeah, this one's fine. I will say, one of the things I really, really love, they do talk about how like there's this fun kind of like weirdness between the super duper god focused Nehakarans and the very not god Cathayans. One of the things I actually love though is they mention the mortuary cult in a good way.
They do.
Which is that the mortuary cult goes, "Oh, you have an immortal emperor? What's that about?" And the Cathayans are like, nothing. Like the Cathayans refuse to talk to them about it. Which causes friction, which is good. That allows for storytelling. There's friction there. You can imagine that back in this day, despite things being totally friendly, that there were Cathayan representatives being like targeted, trying to be kidnapped, interrogated for information. The Cathayans make like keeping a close eye on the mortuary cult because they're a little suspicious. And one of the things that I said in the stream I was talking about, and I don't know if Andy will agree with this, I think he will, is that one of the things I love is this actually provides a really cool hole for if the Nehakarans are learning about the Cathayans and using that to develop their systems, that this could explain why it's ancient dragon blood that's needed to perfect the mortuary cult's immortality.
See, I don't really think that's particularly controversial when you take this reading, because we've got ourselves two groups that, admittedly, because they don't talk about any of the other civilizations Cathayans are dealing with, so they're only focusing on this, but they do talk about how the Nehakarans and the Cathayans are working hand in pocket. Often their armies are working together to clear out areas in the Darklands, and they're exchanging information and secrets. And over on this side of the world in particular, the mortuary cult is examining and trying to understand everything that they can offer. And at the heart of all of their power is the dragons. I think it makes absolute sense. I don't think it's particularly controversial.
Yeah, and I think it does such a cool job of setup of like, it's like you can then tie in certain Cathayan alchemical concepts into how the elixir of mortality by Nagash was created. And we know that the Cathayans were in Lamia before they eventually leave due to Nagash. And that can explain why Neferata is able to kind of make a better version. She had access to more Cathayan material.
And I would argue that, again, that Neferata made the better version of the two. So, that's great. Works really nicely.
Yeah. We also get a note about that Nehakar gets fucking massive. Fine. Cool.
Yes, it does.
Evil Awakens in Nehakara. So this one is basically just that life was great. Nehakara was huge and awesome and at the height of its power. Which kind of might contradict some of the Tomb King lore, but I think it kind of makes more sense and does a better job of telling the Nagash's story, that he basically like inherited things at their best, and then just because of what he is, he makes everything really, really awful.
From his side, I can see how this story goes. It contradicts a lot of the Tomb King's lore here without really intending to. I don't think the intention is to rewrite it here. I think the intention is to give an outside view. And the outside view is Nehekara used to be this. What the land of Nehek was has now turned into the land of, effectively, undeath and horror and dark magics and terrible things, with Nagash doing terrible stuff. And as the centuries pass by, the dragons go, fuck that place.
Yep, and
we need you better allies.
They say call back the ambassadors right now.
Nope, we're out. We are out.
Yeah, which is fine. Cool, great.
That'll work.
New Alliances shows us then they basically hear and learn about Nehakara gets nuked from orbit by Nagash and go, well, shit, that's scary. And Nagash has his one moment of being super duper terrifying, and then he's gone. Though one thing I do like is I think this actually puts Nagash in a really fun lens that I had never thought of before, which is that from an elf, dwarf, or Nehakaran perspective, Nagash's rise to power is freakishly fast. Like, he goes from being just some guy to being like one of the most powerful entities in the world in a blink of an eye from their perspective. Yeah,
it's a meteoric rise, which is important to, people who bring meteors from the sky to destroy ogres for no real reason that we can understand.
Yeah, which would make him very scary. Like, it would make him appear horrifying.
But his own people sort of broke that up anyway, so effectively becomes one of the most powerful empires over in the West into a broken, shattered realm of dark magics and horror. And they were like, fuck that, let's move on. We'll find new allies if they should arise. Yeah. And indeed they do.
Yeah, and this gives us more of our, once again, the book's out of order, so it doesn't do a good job of showing it. But if you read the book in order, Shen Yang retreats more and more and more and more and more. Like he stops paying attention to what's going on in the world around him, which actually lines up with a lot of theories me and Andy have been crafting about good old dad.
It does. Hey, we have very few minutes. We're gonna have to run through these last few pages relatively quickly.
Yeah, okay, we're just gonna blitz. Yin Yin meets Ulthuan, cool. We learn Great Cathay's allowed to trade wherever they want because Yin Yin's apparently good at chatting.
Just a small line on that one. This contradicts previous lore where the elves wouldn't allow anyone to sail the high seas but themselves. This is now being changed to Yin Yin makes a deal with the high elves, who bluntly are barely in those oceans. This is dark elf waters, but makes a deal with the elves, allowing them to go wherever they wish to go. And it's the elves of Ulthuan, which over on Yin Yin's side are almost impossible to reach, except for a small outpost here or there. Ulthuan is all the way around, massive chunks of land, enormous distance. Whoever wrote this is literally twisting this as much as they can to get a high elf mention. Yeah, it's the dark elves who should be here.
Yeah, the dark elves should be here, and it definitely feels
and like the pawn.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this is supposed to be this is why they're allowed to sail into the old world, is because the elves said they could. Then we get that. Yeah, the sky junks go over the world's edge mountains, and the dragons discover the dwarfs, and they start trading. Which this probably happened before they discovered the Hekara, but whatever. Empire in the West, the whole Sigmar Hellhammer thing. Shen Yang hears about it and goes, "Oh, that's interesting." And he sends Miao Ying, and Miao Ying gets to meet Sigmar.
Yeah, this seems like to me bullshit. Largely because of the time scale involved, because these are dragons who are working in scales of ages. Hearing a single warlord has bound together a single empire within, a few years is something like, okay, well, we'll check in on that in maybe 100, 200 years' time, if anything comes of this. No, he arrives during the first reign of an empire that's yet to be properly established because it's fucking Sigmar, and everyone loves going up to Sigmar and saying, "You're the best, mate." Yeah. It's definitely a push.
Yeah, the only thing I could think that would have made this make more sense is if they had gone with more of the idea of, because they have relations with the dwarfs and they have dwarf ambassadors, that word gets to them about how the dwarfs are talking about it.
Indeed. Yeah, that would be great. And then reinforce that with the Astromancers, the sign of the great twin-tailed comet. This is there's all manner of important...
All right, something's going on. Yeah.
This is an era of a great chaos incursion. There's all manner of shit going down during this period. And that should have been played up. But instead they just went, "No, mighty barbarian chief, let's go chat." It's just written very weakly.
He's right. The way they pitch it is dumb. That wouldn't have happened.
But I see no reason why it didn't happen. I just wish they'd written it a bit better.
Yeah, it could have easily happened, but for different reasons than what they list.
Yeah, totally.
Then we get though I do like that the idea that there was a Sea Lord living in the Dragon's Maw, which they have heavily expanded, where the elves have maintained colonies off the coast of Bretonnia and stuff, and they've added a bunch of islands. That's just new to the setting. The idea that the High Elves would have had a presence there in the Sea Lord, cool. Yeah, the idea that the Sea Lord would have been keeping tabs on what's going on and knew about
equally great.
Cool, great. Makes the High Elves more relevant. Awesome, that's good.
Yeah, that's all good. In fact, it's worth noting though that these are not the only human empires that have been in and around these areas. Tilia has been significantly more advanced than Sigmar for some time at this point.
Been kicking around for a good minute,
indeed, Nuln at this period only has what it has because of all the Tilian traders that had moved up to Nuln and founded Temples of Verena. So it's weird that Sigmar gets called out as particularly special without justifying why he's special. Exactly. So, but they didn't give it any justification, so it just feels a bit empty.
Yeah. So that part is kind of goofy, and they skip over a lot of stuff. Harmony of East and West. This is very generally just a broad. People are trading.
That's all it is.
Yeah, people are trading. That's literally what it is. And it says that, hey, now I will say, I do find it very interesting that they call out then the modern era. So this is before the Great War. There are notable Cathayan embassies and quarters in Marienburg, Magritta, Ehrengrad, and Nuln.
Nuln in particular. What the fuck?
Not Altdorf, which is genuinely surprising.
Loved it. Really like that, particularly because Altdorf at this point is not a massive capital, unless, of course, they rewrite it. At this point, the biggest city in the empire is Marienburg by a massive amount. The next one is Nuln by an enormous amount. Altdorf at this point is a tiny city. It doesn't rise to power until the Holzwig-Schlesens take control of it.
I actually really like that list of cities.
I was like, yes!
The only city that's not on it that I would have liked to see is Maragliano, but you have to go like up into the Chilean Gulf.
I mean, Prague is almost certainly something that should be on there as well.
Well, I mean, they have Erengrad.
Yes, they do.
Kislev.
Because Prague's at the end of one of the core chains of the Northern Road, Northern trading roads.
This reads like they're just talking about like ports.
The lack of Chilean cities is a bit sad, but whatever, you can live with it. Yeah, it's pretty decent.
And yeah, that's the end of that. So let's get that's the last like notable section.
It is indeed the last notable section. Other than that, the book just offers the armies of Nangao, which is an interestingly curtailed army list just for Miao Ying's forces, with a little bit of detail about all of the forces, a little bit of extra detail about Miao Ying, a little bit of extra detail about all the different forces that you get. The only notable fact from all this one that I'll call out is their bit about the where is it? It's underneath the Servants of the Celestial Court. Let me just scroll it. There it is. Servants of the Celestial Court, where they make it very clear that I think it's that one, that the magistrates are constantly bickering and trying to take down the dragon.
Yeah. Mao Ying's being undermined by the
at all times, and that shows that there is a deep well of internal strife. The harmony is propaganda, even though we're given it as God voice earlier on in the book.
Yeah, very, very much so, which is super interesting. The last thing I'll say is that adding in that the Sentinels are made out of different materials based on where they are.
Oh, that was nice. Yeah, cool. I like that.
Very fucking cool.
Really cool detail, because it allows you to paint them any way you want for your own individual armies. Even though they're called terracotta Sentinels, they're often of all different types of stone. Really nice detail. Yeah,
and I also like that the different materials do fairly accurate things. Like jade absorbs magic and like brings in magic, which goes along with what obsidian repels it. Like granite is like super tough. Like warpstone, the warpstone Sentinels are so fucking cool. Horrifying. They really are. Cool. All right. Anyway, so let's get.
I'll make one last thing before you do the super chats, and that's that at the back of the book you get all the magical items, and I found them broadly bland. They didn't feel very thematically deep in that they were given names that were often just, very faintly attached to the faction that they were attempting to represent. It's only here or there that it really feels like they are properly, Eastern artifacts. Their descriptions are just a bit bland. I was not as impressed with those as I have been with some of the previous ones.
I agree. I also laughed that they reused the Jade Blade of the Great Fleet, the Lumbrian Sea Monster weapon, which I believe originates from an old High Elf book. So I laughed to see that got turned into a
thing. I also laughed. And in many respects, it showed that they didn't have a great deal of unique creations just for their armies of Nangao.
Yeah. And also the Monkey King gets his one reference with a club.
Hey, but we also got our Lumbria reference, so it's always good to keep that one going.
Yeah. Anyway, all right.
Let's get through our last super chats.
Yes. This one. Yeah. Hey, just suggested with the weird perspectives and time jumps, think AI could have been used the right parts of this book. I don't think so, and I really hope not.
Okay, so I'm going to say I really hope not, but I'm also going to say that that this is an example of what AI often does, and then a human editor comes in afterwards and tries to tidy it up. It feels a bit like that, in that it doesn't feel like it had a strong editorial voice at the top saying, what we want is the book to have this order to present this information for this target, i.e. why we're writing it this way. This book jumps backwards and forwards all over the place without a strong cohesive plan. And that's when I go, wait a minute, if it had been AI makes plans. So actually, I'm going to withdraw and say, I don't think it was AI. I think it was just not necessarily well thought out.
Yeah, I do think it's a damn shame that they don't credit a single person in this book.
Yeah, so it's really hard to say exactly where it came from.
Yeah, that's suspicious.
It's never good, is it?
No.
But no, Games Workshop haven't been crediting their writers or their artists for a long time now, because it's a product of Games Workshop. Something I deeply, deeply disagree with.
Yeah, I'll bluntly say I don't care who's watching. That's a shitty business practice, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah, it is. It's just awful.
Yeah, Tyrant. I rate all books on how much they feature ogres. 0 out of 5 stars. Fair. But we did get some nice ogre minis.
There are a few ogre. There's some ogres inside the army, so I would increase that to a 1 out of 5 stars if I were you.
I think it's fair.
I give it a 1 out of 5.
Donoman, hell, the weirdest part of this book is they didn't even give detailed playable factions inside Cathay. Forget detailed factions. Forget why is there no details of Beastmen and Greek? Yeah, the Cathay map. I was pleased to see there are Beastmen in Cathay, but they don't talk about them, which is odd.
Yeah, the whole book is a variety of missed opportunities that we are not surprised about because it's an arcane journal. The arcane journals are light. There's not a great deal of depth in these, which means that the space that they used, you would expect them to use with great care and to provide as much juicy information as they can to make you salivate at the prospect of what Grand Cathay is. And sadly, they didn't do that. Instead, they repeated themselves multiple times. They gave an inconsistent view of the timeline. They provided some material that's actually difficult to parse and understand. But what they did do was, for the first time, give us, for Warhammer, Grand Cathay. It's there for the first time. It might be a small part of it. It might be really weirdly presented, but it is there. It matches Total War. And for me, that alone is all kinds of freaking awesome.
I will say, Games Workshop, Lorebeards, hire us anytime. We'll fix all your books. We can fix them.
Damn,
we can do
fucking it straight. I can fix that.
Yeah. Let's see. Speaking of Annie Hall, when are you getting in for another interview? Rich Alders. So I am currently in talks with Creative Assembly to get somebody on for Tides of Torment stuff. I don't know who we're gonna get, but we'll get somebody.
Sounds great. Woo.
Awesome Allosaurus. Also, finally Lorebeards again. Also hype for Greg Cathay. Just bought my first ever Warhammer Fantasy Armies. Greg Cathay, but no Meow Ying. When is Wave 2? I believe Wave 2 is like in 1 or 2 months. It's coming up soonish.
I'd just like to say to that, Games Workshop, you knew how many people were going to want to have this. Why didn't you up production?
Yeah, it's GW.
Mental.
Vasily, did Nehakara inspire Cathay with its constructs? It's possible.
I like to think that's the case. Because they were in contact and they would have seen the benefits that they brought for Nehakara, and in turn gone, we can make our own better versions. I don't think that's a bad idea. I like it when there is cross-population of ideas, pollination, of ideas. I like that.
That would actually work out really well timeline-wise, because the Celestial Dragon Emperor doesn't create the Cathayan Sentinels until around the Great Bastion, which is 1800 IC, and Cathay, like, Nehakara is already around.
Yeah, totally. Works
they
perfectly.
Probably already met. So that would work really well.
Yeah, agreed.
Arch Warlock, I feel like the stream is just Andy and Sotek bashing Cathay for being new and not having all of its lore developed yet.
No. In fact, I'm going to sit here and say no, because it does have all the lore developed. That's it. It does. It's all there. It's cool. The bash here is that it's not been organized well for this book.
Yeah.
No, Arch Warlock. No.
Yeah, if you go back and listen carefully, we love all the stuff that's revealed in this book. It's just the presentation that we have problems with.
Yep, completely.
Dumb man. Honestly, they should have had an embassy in Talbeckland as well, as the Attilan Empire held itself together better than the Empire most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, not wrong. And granted, did you say etc.?
One of the problems that the writers of the current old world have, if you wish to view this as a problem, is that they're viewing the Empire as one place.
Yeah.
And they keep on presenting it like that, where if we go with what has been written before, the Ottoman Empire is exceedingly strong at this point. But they're rewriting it in their own way, so that may no longer be the case.
From Eggman, wonder if it was Sea Lord Iceland or someone else. So we actually talked about this on the stream. I doubt it's Iceland.
I highly doubt it's Ashland. It seems very unlikely.
Because that means, because I actually went and did the math. He would.
I mean, it might be, but no.
Yeah, it might be, but because they don't say who it is, which makes me think more heavily that it isn't him. Because if it was, I think they would have just said it. But that would have meant that he would have been Sea Lord for like 3 Phoenix Kings, which is a long time.
Now, if he is an avatar of Manan, then fine, sure.
Yeah,
but he's rarely presented in such fashion till the end times.
Yeah, because he doesn't go through his whole he died at sea, and then he comes back miraculously healed and everything until after the Great War. So
yeah, exactly. So that's, I would suggest that no, it's not, and that very possibly it could be an avatar of Mathlan, who is, and who very possibly will die in the Great War.
Yeah, Zylok, I love that there can now be agent NPCs in RPG. I mean, there already could be, but now it's easier.
Yeah, there could be.
4th edition core book did a good job with that. There's all sorts of different folks if you go actually look at the art.
The ambassador character, in fact, is I think a Cathayan.
Yes,
as I
recall.
Yep. Yeah.
Phil, I demand a special rule that Terracotta Sentinel should simply collapse when Thoric Ironbrow gets close enough to them, because if anyone could deny those by sheer force of will, it's him. So that's not how that works. It's not that they're like,
certainly give it a go.
Yeah. Now, do I think that his hammer-clad Brakak could theoretically be devastating to magical constructs? Yes, that would make sense. But the idea that his mere presence would destroy them is a little silly. Though it would be funny. Dino Man, oh god, I just thought with all the inconsistence that Cathay's Harmonious Preferred mixed with more in-depth from Total War, the wiki might be really confusing for lore newbies. You say that like it already isn't, but sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. False Apprentice, the Ogre Kingdom's book says Grand Cathay started the Great Migration. I'm willing to bet they did, and the Sky Titans thing is this cover up for genocide. Sky Titans make the black powder, and Big D took credit, and Cathay invented it and covered up the fact that he fucked up by starting the Ogre Migration. That's not impossible, but it's a lot of shit having to happen in the background.
Yeah, I mean, that's not impossible at all, because that's the sort of shit that sometimes does indeed happen. Is that what happened, though? That'd be entirely up to you in your version of Warhammer.
Yeah, there is definitely still the big mystery of what was so awful about the ogres that they threw the meteor at them. That's the thing that needs to be solved. That's the thing that I think has to be solved. Unrelated, but waiting to catch you both, in the Malice Darkblade books, his brother's able to control divine magic from Cain. I thought it was only humans. So
elves with hair. That's all I need to say. Yeah, the Malice Darkblade is filled with a whole host of very interesting choices.
They're older books. Is the best way to put it. They're older books, and also the story of Malice Darkblade is not super original and takes a lot of things from another series. I'll put it this way: if you go read the what's the series, the
Elric books,
yeah, it's like you go oh when you read those. I love Malice Darkblade. It's got some issues, but yeah, that's it's Warhammer. What are you gonna do? Basically, somber reading about how great Cathay is, only to remember how they were destroyed in the end times. So in defense of the end times, Grand Cathay was not a faction. It wasn't relevant. It's not a faction, and they were in a rush. I don't consider that the canonical ending of Cathay, because we don't actually know what happened. All we get is a sentence saying Grimgor ran into it. But we also have other Chaos characters saying they were there doing stuff. So, clearly there's a story, but nobody is telling what it is. So, I think a lot of people are like, oh, I can't believe Grimgor just destroyed it. It's like, well, we don't know what happened. We just know that somebody destroyed it, maybe. But, it's very vague. I wouldn't get hung up on it.
Agreed.
And that takes us 10 minutes over time, but hey, we got to the end.
Yeah, we did. I'll give a super short summary. We've got Grand Cathay, which is something for us to all rejoice. When it originally came out for Total War, we thought this was super fun extra, but the likelihood of us ever seeing miniatures was next to nil, because Warhammer was dead. But the Old World came along. And the Old World has now, for the first time, made a relatively small but decisive foray into creating a new faction, and that is Grand Cathay. We can collect them for the first time. We've got a book for them for Warhammer for the first time, and this is something that we should and definitely do celebrate. But that doesn't mean we won't be critical, particularly here at Lorebeards. We like to be critical, but we also like to champion the great examples of not just the lore and the writing, but the rules and the miniatures, because we love this shit. Grand Cathay's miniatures are fucking amazing. The book, however, is I'm not going to say shoddily put together. It looks very slick. But in terms of its editorial stance and the direction they've taken, the information is very oddly presented. And it doesn't make best use of the space that it has. It bounces around through time, and it gives such a perfect view of the Cathayans while simultaneously contradicting itself in God voice in the same book, and also contradicting the Old World book, that we can't help but, having now read it more than once, go, well, that's some odd choices that you've made. We feel that this one could have probably been edited better. We feel that the stories it presented could have been given deeper, better justifications with the space that it had. We love the book. We love that it exists. We just think it probably could and should have been not just better, but much better. Do you think that's fair?
Yes, and the funniest thing is that I could boil down the last 3 hours of criticism into 2 sentences.
Go.
Put quotation marks on propaganda. Put the timeline in actual timeline order.
Yeah.
That would fix 95% of the book.
And it would fix almost everything, because the actual information in the book, I mean, it's not bad. It's just very poorly presented.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, we're back.
Thanks, everyone. That was great. Yeah. We were back. Woohoo!
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us. We had a really good time.
We did. Next week will be Araby on the Sunday.
Yes, next Sunday's Araby. And this Wednesday is the very, very cursed, apparently, Colleges of Magic tier list.
It's going to happen one time, doesn't it? So this Wednesday, Colleges of Magic's happening.
Yeah, this book actually does give us some fun things to talk about. And it's because because we're not just discussing the Empire's institutions of magical learning, we're discussing other places as well, including Grand Cathay, because they have the Temple of the Twin Eclipse, or whatever it is, which we will discuss. And this book actually provides a little bit of knowledge about that, which is fun. So thank you all very much for joining us. Once again, we'll be back this Wednesday and the following Sunday. Also, there may be some bonus episodes soonish, because there's a lot of stuff we got to do. Because we've got like Tides of Torment coming down from this way, and we've got other shit coming down from this way. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Right. Bye.